We made it. We're here. I'm not going to lie to you guys today. Today I'm having just like a heartburnish kind of day. I'm just like sitting here being like, like suffering and living in pain. Oh, you know what I completely forgot about as well? Oh my goodness. How could I forget about the majestic David Lynch? The unbelievable, the real, the true. Oh, I'm off. I know, buddy, I know. And my dog is here getting all burfy, getting in everybody's business. Hey guys, how y'all doing today? We made it. We're here. Finally went and did a walk around the graveyard video. A couple of my Patreons have been asking me to return back to that format. And the minute I started to do it, I realized why I stopped doing it, which is because it makes it even more kind of morbid and horrible to be talking about what I'm talking about while walking around a graveyard. It does sort of give it a quality, though, I'll tell you. And then after I finished, though, I felt good. I felt good about it. I felt good about what I had done. I think that there's like an extra sort of a pressure, in a way, doing the graveyard video. Because the graveyard video, like, it's kind of a one and done sort of affair. Like, I don't really edit it very much or any of that kind of stuff. Whereas with doing the splicing of this kind of commentary and this kind of stuff, it makes it easier. Like, I always know that I can just, like, cut it up or, like, do all that kind of stuff. So, like, I think I got to keep doing the graveyard video, though, because I think it's closer to actual art. Hey, Chris, how you doing, bud? Good to see you. Good to see you. The seems like it's kind of a cold, dreary day today, and I got to tell you, I'm having just kind of a cold... You ever have one of those days where you just never wake up? You're just constantly, and it doesn't matter what happens. It's exactly where I'm at right now, where I'm just like, I haven't really woken up. So we'll see what happens. Pissed off Canadian coming in with Big Ten right off the bat, getting ready to go. Chris, do you want in on this? Do you want in on the guess the number? Come on, Chris. I know you do. What am I going to go with today? I'm going to go with a... You know what? My brain thought 6, and so I did 6 yesterday, but I'll do 6 again. What the heck? I've only ever won this thing twice. All right, let's get it started.
Here we go for today's number.
Today's number.
It's November 2, 2021.
We got a 5 from Harry. Good to see you, Harry.
10 balls.
So we got a 6,
Each
a 5, a 10.
ball has a number. Numbers 1 through 10. Swirl the numbers.
I love it. Here we go.
Pick a number.
Mr. Lynch.
Today's number is 6.
Ha 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 ha. Well, maybe that means something nice will happen to me. Isn't that nice? Oh, that actually makes me feel really nice about myself. I gotta tell you, just knowing that somehow David Lynch and I are connected through the magic of the energy that we exist in makes me feel good about myself. That's a nice, warm feeling. That could be the acid reflux that I'm experiencing right now, but I'll say that it's the David Lynch energy and the magic. Well, isn't that nice? So, of course, let's getting into the day's news, right? We've got a lot to talk about today, actually, as you can see. Trudeau calls for global carbon tax at COP26. Yeah, this is, of course, just like, hey guys, the way to do this is to make the plebs pay for everything, right? Canada is like the largest subsidizer of fossil fuels, so it's kind of a joke that Justin Trudeau is walking around telling other countries how they should deal with the crisis when we subsidize the fossil fuel industry more than any other country in the G20. But it does, like, at this stage in the game, I am viewing the conversation that's happening less about our leaders being interested in the survival of the species and more about keeping kind of royalty in place. That if we don't actually, as the royalty, right, of these nations, if we don't actually do something or pretend to do something about this issue, then the serfs or the plebs are going to rise up against us. And like these sorts of statements, putting a price on pollution is the most efficient and powerful way to keep 1.5C alive. I mean, one would assume that nationalizing the fossil fuel industry and mandating the closing down of pollutants would be the best way to do it. But the reason, like, and this is like the unspoken truth, and as we're moving forward, it's getting more and more clear and more obvious. The unspoken truth about why they want to do this price on pollution way of doing things is because we've already seen Western nations will spend infinite money on their military, right? So putting a price on carbon when you're going to spend infinite money on your military is irrelevant. The largest producer of CO2 emissions on Earth is the United States military. Putting a price on carbon is not going to prevent the military from doing military actions. That if we actually wanted to combat this climate crisis, the way to do it is to demand a de-escalation of the United States military. How about an international corporate tax? Eliminate hiding money. Yeah. And these are like, isn't it getting really clear that like all of these nations are starting to realize like, oh, we're going to have to like create an alliance with one another as nations in order to like declare our independence from Richistan. That we've allowed the powerful and the rich to essentially extract wealth from our nations and offshore them so effectively that we really are in a position where we have to create like international agreements in order to prevent the wealthy from exploiting us any longer. And I really do just get to a point where I'm like, why are we playing this game? Why are we playing this game at all? Like, let's take all these pieces and put them into the box and play a different game, right? And we could. Like, all of this bullshit and nonsense that we're dealing with is because we're tied into an international banking system that fails and doesn't work. It's a failure of a system. And if we created public banks, told the International Monetary Fund and all of these international bankers and all these big corporate interests to get fucked, right? What would they do? They would cry and be like, well, then we're not going to invest in Canada. And I'd be like, great, perfect. Like, oh no, we don't have any parasites in the country. Oh, the parasites are going to leave. I'm going to leave. Good. Like, I can't imagine a better thing to happen to us than have all these parasites leave, right? And this is what the powerful are refusing to do. They're refusing to call the bluff of these worthless parasites, these worthless capitalists who do no work, provide no benefit to us, and in fact are a major detriment to us. And instead of outright calling them out on their stupid bullshit and just extracting them from the society and then moving forward healthier and better as a people, like, what happens? Let's say Elon Musk. Let's use Elon Musk because he's the big guy, right? He's got $200 billion or however many, like 500, it doesn't matter. The number is so fucking high that it's almost irrelevant now. It could be like 15 quadrillion dollars. Like, it's so just grotesque and absurd. If suddenly he left America, right, with all of his wealth and all of his money and moved to, I don't know, like Madagascar or whatever, or went back home to South Africa, right, where he re-implemented his father's slave labor mines or whatever. So, right? The way that an economy actually works, which is in a cycle. So he leaves and takes all his money and goes away. So we experience a deflation of like 2%, right? Because his wealth is out of the system. And then we all just move on without him. This is why the whole tax the rich thing in order to solve economic problems is stupid. Like, the United States government can print money and do what it wants to do. It just needs to prioritize actually doing it. Like, this is the deep sin that exists in North America. That, like, the poverty that exists in this country can be eliminated. It could be eliminated in a day. The universal healthcare system that exists in Canada could be implemented in the United States. It would take less than a year, right? And Military Forces TV. How's that for a name? Good to see you, bud. I don't think I've ever seen you in here. Hopefully you're here to contribute. We're here to create a positive atmosphere to grieve the death of capitalism. Close to 292 billion. Makes no sense why one person can be worth so much, even though his companies are not profiting. Well, it's because Elon Musk is intrinsically tied into the military. That's why he gets so heavily subsidized. Because he's a front for the military to use their toys, right? So instead of it being, the military is creating a new type of drone or robot, right? It's cute Elon Musk on his quest to get to Mars, right? So it's a front is what it is. And that's the reason why he's so heavily rewarded for it. But if he were to suddenly go away, it would have like almost no impact whatsoever. And if our government actually just started prioritizing, instead of military expenditure, started prioritizing literally anything else, well, then we would have a much better society. Like, the more and more you actually investigate what money is and what the what monetary principles are, what economics is, or how any of this actually works or anything, you really realize very quickly, well, not very quickly, I think it actually takes quite a bit of time because you got to get through so much bullshit and propaganda to get to here. But you realize eventually that it's mainly imagination. It's mainly imagination, that we can imagine a world in which teachers are actually paid decently, where doctors are paid decently, where everyone has access to health care, right? We can imagine that world, and so we create that world, right? We can do it. Like, and using the power of imagination, we literally do these things. This is how we do things. And that's why it's so important to denigrate the arts. That's why it's so important to destroy imagination. Because you can't have a populace realizing that, like, oh, we can actually create this. We just need to actually do it. And instead, we funnel all of our money and all of our wealth into military expenditures so that the United States military can be the most polluting force on the planet, while Justin Trudeau turns around and tells all of the nations to tax their own citizens instead, right? Like, you see how the liberals are selling us to a death cult. It's very, very clear that that's what they're doing. That instead of saying, hey, maybe we could reduce and de-escalate military adventurism across the globe, which is the number one thing that's actually causing us problems and actually killing us, like, the climate change issue has become a military issue. It is 100% a military issue, and nobody's talking about it that way. Because if you actually started to talk about it as a military issue, then taking an anti-war stance is also also a climate change stance. And these guys are frauds, right? So they can't actually talk this way. When Quebec enacted their language laws in the 1980s, tons of international companies left the province, saying Quebec's financial house would collapse. It didn't, and Quebec thrives, of course. Because look, this is the narcissism of the corporate class, right? They threaten to leave because they believe that they're the only one that can provide the service that's being done, not realizing that their only power is their connection to the state, and the state which gives them monopoly control over the industry. And so if they leave because they're dumb narcissists, Well, someone else is going to do that job. All they do is create a vacuum which gets filled. And if it gets filled by somebody who actually lives in the community and then does contribute to the community, it's actually better than if we give it to somebody who doesn't even live in the country, probably couldn't find the corporation or the companies on the map if they tried, and then extract that wealth and ship it off to who gives a shit a stand, right? Like, I am 100% of the opinion that if all we did was extract the capitalist class from the society and throw them into the ocean, our society would improve immediately. It would be instantaneous. Of course, there's other things we'd have to do, but it'd be a real good start. Considering all his money is already in offshore accounts, his exodus along with the rest of the billionaires would mean absolutely nothing, yeah. And I don't know, an imposed banishment seems fine by me, right? Just banish these guys. Everything you said is the awful truth, but I think it's too late. Capitalism is just too powerful. It will take climate change apocalypse or nuclear holocaust, then survivors rebuild system. I mean, I'm somewhat on the fence about this military because, I mean, I do think that it's too late to dodge some bullets. Right? Like there's a really, it'll come up later, I'm sure of it. Here it is. Right, so this is 2020, right? Any place where sustainability for human life, if it's red, right, like this that you're seeing, not very sustainable. Yellowish is pretty sustainable. Black is literally like no go, right? No bueno. And as you can see, between 2020 and 2070, right, this is what makes Trudeau's statements that 2050 will be net neutral by 2050 a total joke, right? Because he's outright stating that he doesn't give a shit about the countries that live on the equator, right? That capitalism is already sacrificing those countries, right? If you live in India, Africa, along the equator, South America, right? You can see even sections of Australia, right? The capitalist death cult doesn't give a fuck about you, and they're outright stating that they don't give a fuck about you. Like, it is going to come to the point where we are going to elect some Trump-style figure who is just going to say we don't give a fuck about these places, that they just need to deal with themselves. Right? That's what's going to happen. And there is an element, like, can humanity actually learn? Are we capable of learning? Are we capable of figuring out how to avoid catastrophe before the catastrophe unfolds? To be determined. And we'll... But I am of the opinion now that, like, we should be abandoning these liberals en masse. And you can see that the populace is getting more and more skeptical of Trudeau. And you can see that, like, we didn't give him his majority. You can see that the liberals are starting to feel the heat because they're actually coming out and propagandizing us very heavily. Things like the stupid cap, talking about net zero by 20. Anything they can say to convince us to just go back to sleep instead of surrounding the halls of power and abandoning the Liberal Party, which is exactly what we should do. Anything to do that. Yeah, you should do your bit to help the environment. I am helping. Oh no. Like, what do you guys think is happening, right? What do you guys think is happening? Like, there's and the narrative always comes to turning to blame it on the individual, right? Saying that, oh, but it's individuals that purchase things from the corporations. But the reality is that it's the United States military that is the reason why these corporations are providing this much pollution. Because the corporations work for the United States military, right? Who are loosely beholden to the political structure. And who owns the political structure? Oh, it's the corporate owners, right? You're seeing how it's a nice little fucking tight little loop that you're not really involved in, honestly. Like, the average citizen's footprint when it comes to carbon, like this is actually a fairly solid analogy, right? Like it's so low, it's so infinitesimally insignificantly low that when you compare it against the overwhelming power and the strength of the United States military and the amount that it's polluting, and then the amount that it purchases from corporations, and of course, the same people who own the corporations are also military contractors, right? So it's like an incestuous situation. It's an incestuous monopoly style situation where the military and corporations are in bed with one another in order to embark on this manifest journey of like manifest destiny and this idea that we own the planet and constantly seeking out ways to destroy everyone around us, when the reality is if we just chilled the fuck out, like if America just chilled the fuck out, everything would be fine, right? Like, and it would be. Like, sure, there will be some conflicts. Sure, there will, like, humans are humans after all. Like, but we're not going to, but this idea that we'll send like fighter jets and aircraft carriers and all this kind of stuff into the world, and that's somehow making us safer. Well, it's fundamentally false. It is the crisis of our day, right? And it all comes back to the same thing. It's war. It's war. That we don't actually understand what war is doing to us, and we don't actually understand that war is itself a spirit that has taken us over. And it's spreading pollution into the atmosphere. It's killing our wildlife. It's killing this place. And eventually, there's an old ancient statement: what you do to them, you do to yourself. And that is eventually what is going to happen here in America. And so our goal was just listening to some people talk about Occupy, and they were participants in Occupy. And the lesson for them is that people need to organize before the event begins. And so our goal is to get organized and to get prepared for an event so that if we can create another Occupy style situation, we can actually begin to implement legislation and begin to implement our own agenda without the permission of the capitalist death cult at all, right? That's the thing they fear the most. Like, if we were to surround the halls of power and begin creating amongst ourselves documents and legislation that we all agreed to and abided by, there's nothing they can do about that. Like, all they can do about that is to send the military at us. And the United States is a rogue terrorist state already. And so it's only a matter of time until the facade of democracy goes away. It's only a matter of time until it is just ruled explicitly through military force. And it's up to us to constantly push back against that. Because I don't think I want to live in that arrangement. That doesn't seem like a good arrangement to me. Yeah, I pledge not to spill 4.9 million barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, good pledge. Thanks, Harry. Thanks, Harry. I appreciate that. You know what, Harry? Inspired by your initiative, I too pledge not to spill 4.9 million barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. And I think that if every individual stands up and pledges not to spill 4.9 million barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico, then we'll only ever do it one time. Progress. I miss David Graeber too, dude. He died too soon. I think they got him with the cancer gun is what they did. Canada leads G20 in financing fossil fuels, right? Legs in renewable funding. I think I gotta save this one. I'm seeing propaganda go around the internet pretending like Canada is actually participating in any of this bullshit. It's total garbage, right? They're very much going in the wrong direction, said Bronwyn Tucker, who helped prepare the report for the group, which has been tracking public finance of fossil fuels since 2012. The report, which includes 2019 and 2020, adds up loans, loan guarantees, grants, share purchases, insurance coverage, because that's what they'll do, right? They'll lower something over here, but then increase something over here, and if you're unaware of how it works, you'll be like, oh, wow, they're actually helping. These fucking con men. And like, really think about how despicable this is getting. Like, really think about how despicable this is getting. That it's one thing if they run a con on us in order to like privatize a piece of infrastructure or something so that they can wedge themselves in and make some money or any of that kind of stuff. Literally what they are doing now, and they're doing it in front of your face, they're admitting that they're doing it, they're being very open about it, is they are maintaining a system of death that they call the economy. They are maintaining a system of death based on the extraction and burning of a resource that is killing us. And they're very upfront about it. My favorite is when they take hostages. My favorite is when they're like, oh, well, think about the jobs, right? They don't give a fuck about that at all. It's just hostage taking, right? Like these people are our enemies, right? Like we have been abandoned by a death cult that doesn't care what happens to us. It's very obvious that that's the case. And the only solution is to surround the halls of power. There's nothing left. And speaking of allies of the death cult, right? So Budget Implementation Act. So after the Liberals abandon 1 million people by cutting the CRB, both the Bloc Québécois and the New Democrats are supporting them, as well as the Greens, incidentally, and 3 independents. One person in the NDP actually has a moral conscience and said nay. So as far as I'm concerned, the New Democratic Party is just a wing of the Liberal Party at this point. They're not going to stand up against the Liberals on anything. It's all just showmanship. They're not actually going to attempt to help the populace. They're not going to demand that support systems be put in. You're not going to see something like a basic income. You're not going to see any of that kind of stuff because the New Democratic Party isn't a serious party. They're just another wing of the Liberal Party. That's all they are. Like, all they are. And they should be treated as such, and that's how I'm going to communicate about them from now on. Because as we move, like, we are entering a phase of abandonment. Like, and I think that just needs to be stated as cleanly as possible. That now it's about just controlling the dissent so that when the populace falls into the pit of fire, they'll do so without complaint, right? Or if they do complain, they'll be too disorganized at the end as they fall into the wildfires and burn to death, or as they get thrown out into the streets, right? Like, that's the goal of the ruling party at this stage. It is a policy of abandonment. And that's true of both the Liberals and the Conservatives, and now also as well as the New Democrats and the Bloc Québécois. Our entire political system, from the start to the finish, has been corrupted. And irreconcilably so. It can't be retrieved. It can't be fixed. It needs to be replaced. It needs to be replaced, and the way to do that is to surround the halls of power with enough people to create a new system and incarcerate these guys. Because what they're doing is criminal. Like, what they're doing is criminal. Like, as bad as any villain you've ever seen in your life, as bad as Adolf Hitler, as bad as Voldemort, like, pick the worst hero in your brain, or the worst villain, rather. When I say who's the evilest villain in your brain, right, conjure that, and then recognize that every politician and every person in our political system is on that level. The same. Right? It's not hyperbolic to say that, because even the villain that you're thinking of in your head didn't attempt to destroy all human life didn't attempt to get us all to go along with the destruction of human life while they propped up the system that's actively destroying us. Like, we have never seen evil on this scale. Like, really think about that. We have never seen people who have been this evil on this scale. It's never happened because no one has attempted to destroy humanity before. Like, and that's what they're doing. And my favorite part is that while they destroy humanity, they're still trying to convince us that this system is worth a damn at all. Like, yikes. Yikes. So the options are to retreat into nihilism and just, go off and commit suicide, which lots of people are taking that way out, or to actually galvanize people and get them into the streets. It's shockingly difficult to do that, though. I'm surprised. I'm surprised at that. I have far more respect for the people who just say, oh, well, it's over, and off themselves. I got a lot of respect for that. Especially compared to the people who are just like, okay, I guess I'll go work for the job that's killing me. Like, just like the dummies that are just like shuffling to their job that they hate, that they know is going to destroy them. Like, what? Like, what? That's extremely confusing to me. Like, when I go out my front door and I take a look at like cars going, like I'm on a fairly major interstate and there's just like cars and cars and cars and cars and cars and cars. And I'm just like, what the fuck are all you people doing? Like, what the fuck are all of you doing? You guys should, like, park your cars in the road and prevent this road from working. Like, that's respectable, right? I don't know why anyone is still participating in this. I don't know why like, it's literally just the Karens and the Kens at this point. I think we need to strive for socialism, like, in Scandinavian countries. Even to me, the only reason why the Scandinavian countries are able to get like social democracy going on is because of the threat of communism, right? It's because the people and the workers and the unions are able to look at the capitalists and say, hey, we could just do the communism thing. Here it is, right? Like, that's the reason why the Scandinavian countries are able to push their capitalist classes more towards a socialism style model. Is because it's the threat of revolution and the threat of overthrowing them. Yeah, Scandinavian countries are capitalists. Yeah, absolutely. And that's always been the negotiation, right? The negotiation with the capitalist classes: do we get to survive or not, right? And in the Scandinavian countries, that negotiation has been more successful because there's always been a looming threat of revolution and overthrow, right? Like, the Soviet Union was right fucking there. Like, it was right fucking there, right? The unions and all these guys were looking at the capitalists being like, we could just do it. Like, give us what we're telling you to give us, or we'll just do it, right? And the capitalists went, okay. But if you don't have that, like if you don't actually have the threat of a revolutionary overthrow, the capitalists are not going to give you fucking anything. They don't care about you. They don't care about you at all. Like, they don't care about you at fucking all. And what it's resulting in, and what this climate change catastrophe is resulting in, is what we're calling the Great Resignation, right? Where it's turning into a debate between is it a labor shortage? No, it's a wage shortage. No, it's a labor shortage. Oh, it's a wage shortage. Oh, Biden is giving people 50 cents a day. Like, that's what's doing it. But the truth is that everybody is starting to realize that this place is going to burn fucking down. And no, I'm not going to flip burgers while it's happening. Right? Like, how much money would they have to pay you to stand in a burning fire? Like that. And I'm not asking that rhetorically. Like, really think to yourself, hey, there's a burning building in there. Go into the burning building and make tacos and burritos while the building burns down. What wage would you set for yourself, do you think? Like, what wage would you actually set for yourself? It's become a complete and total embarrassment. And nobody's actually talking about it this way. That, like, yeah, people are resigning. The place is literally burning down. Like, and it's going to continue burning down. There's no sign that it's going to improve. And here in Canada, the heat is actually going up at double the rate of everywhere else. So we're a tinderbox ready to explode. And maybe once major cities start to light up, maybe once people start to boil to death in their apartments, the politicians will finally say, well, I guess we should do something about it. Like, surround the halls of power. If you're here in Toronto, come to protest November 7th. That's this Sunday, 2 p.m. 6 Tetton Hall Road. It's Doug Ford's house. Yeah, protest. I don't know why it's so difficult to get people out. I don't know why it's so difficult to get people to protest. Like, your country is burning down. The Scandinavian countries gained their position because they overshored everything to Africa, their approximate locations in relation to other imperialist powers, and because USSR was right next door. Exactly, Mocked. Always coming in with the hard facts, Mocked. That's what I like. That's what I like. Keeping us all honest, man. And also, by the way, Tinker X, I don't think I said hello to you, and I don't know what to call you, friend, but thanks for coming in. Thanks for contributing positively, guys, because, like, the shit that I put up with, man. The shit that we all put up with, honestly. Yeah. Living wage in Metro Vancouver and Victoria is now over $20 an hour, right? It's very similar here in Toronto. Doug Ford, because we're going into election season, has raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour, which is what his political opponent, Kathleen Wynne, in the last election wanted to do. So, and maybe back then, like 4 years ago, a $15 minimum wage would have been reasonable, but now we're looking at 20, right? And because of the rate of inflation, inflation has gone up. They admit that inflation has gone up 4.4%. I think it's much higher than that. That's just what they're admitting. So that means that if you didn't actually get a raise of 4% or 4.4%, you've lost money, right? And especially as like we know that rent is going up. Yeah, businesses set to raise prices and wages, adding to inflation concerns. So not only are you losing value as the price inflates, they're also crushing you down, right? And so, and of course, what's already happened in many cases is that it's gone whoop, right? That's already happened. Why do you think people are in this great resignation outside of their own sense of self-preservation or giving a shit about their own life? Like, why would I work for a job that doesn't even pay my bills? Like, I'll just be homeless. Like, I'm not going to be homeless and work for you. Like, that's ridiculous. Yeah, Toronto Star or U of T did a study. According to them, you need to be earning over $33 an hour to live comfortably in and around Toronto. Yeah, like it's grotesque. It's grotesque. Like, we need to absolutely put in price controls. We need absolutely to put in rent controls. I'm of the opinion that there are like enormous amounts of like there are slumlords that we should seize all their properties from, just straight up, and just say to them, get fucked, bye, right? Like, we're the government, fuck off. And that's not happening, of course, and it's not happening for obvious reasons, because the slumlords own the politicians, right? Developers, rather. Which, again, is like, the only thing left for us to do is to surround the halls of power. It's just getting, like, and eventually I come to a point where I have to start asking, like, what is it going to take? What is it going to take? Is it going to take millions of people who are homeless in the streets? Is it going to take wildfires? Is it going to take, like, I just feel like we are living in a period of mass delusion. That people, like, this last election was actually a touch hopeful to me, because it showed me that people were not willing to just gullibly go along with these liberals who are actively abandoning them, right? But it also showed that there's still a large amount of denial about the Liberal Party, right? They get 152 or 153 seats, right? As a party whose policy is active abandonment of the populace. Like, That's pretty brutal. It's pretty brutal that right now Canadian politics has such a heavy amount. Like people actually think the Liberals give a shit about them. Like that's shocking. That's shocking. Like, oh, you actually think the Liberals care? Holy shit! Like, what a perfect type of people to swindle. Like, of course, of course, capitalists love us because we're so gullible and stupid. We're literally willing to go along with the people who are actively trying to destroy us. Like, it's really, really something. Like, should there be any survivors from this conflagration, one of the things that the historians are certainly going to look back on is ask themselves, why did anyone tolerate this? Why was anyone actually going along with this? It seems like a total disaster the entire time. The Alberta 2020 living wage is $20.69 per hour, a substantial 27% increase from the 2018 rate, and a difference of 39% from Alberta's minimum wage. Yeah. Well, and at this point, it doesn't actually matter how quickly we try to get the legislation in to raise the minimum wage. The currency is being devalued, right? Like if you zoom this out into the big meta platform of the world, America and ostensibly Canada are about to experience a massive, massive currency crisis. And it's a massive currency crisis that's coming, guys. Like the level of the currency crisis is going to make every other crisis we've ever experienced look like baby's first crisis. We are talking about a devaluation of the currency completely. We're talking about a devaluation of, like, literally the thing we use to buy food is going to be valueless. It's going to have no value whatsoever. It's going to be a massive, massive crisis that we're all going to go through simultaneously. And because of that crisis, the only thing that will actually have value are hard assets, which is why the billionaire class is buying up hard assets. It's why Bill Gates is buying up farmland. It's why people are buying up all of this land, because they know that the currency crisis is going to devalue the currency, so that, like, Jeff Bezos and these guys that like oh, they're worth $500 billion or whatever, all that kind of stuff. But any liquidity that they have is going to be worthless, and they know it's going to be worthless. And how do I know that they know it's going to be worthless? Because they keep betting against the market. If you actually look at the portfolio of places like Citadel or Vanguard or these like high-level hedge funds, they're betting against the market completely. Why? Because they know it's going to crash. And why is it going to crash? Because there's going to be a currency crisis where the American dollar is going to be worth fucking nothing. Fucking nothing. 0% value. No one's going to want it. Right? This is a major, major, major looming crisis, and they know it exists. They know it's coming, and they're preparing no one for it. So that when it occurs, they can just fall back on their Great Reset rhetoric, right? Oh, don't worry, guys. This is just part of the Great Reset, right? That, sure, we're going through a tumultuous moment right here because of the Great Reset, but things will stabilize. Guess what? They're not going to stabilize. And anybody who's stupid enough to believe the Great Reset propaganda that's going to come out of the state while it's all happening is going, like, fucking, in my view, deserves the outcome, which is neo-feudalism, basically. Like, literally, we will work for 5 people, and that is what will happen. Oh, yeah, they'll keep raising prices so that minimum wage always stays at poverty level. Well, and now they're not even being smart enough to make the minimum wage actually pay for anything. So it's not even that, like, they're trying to keep it like this. Now the minimum wage is here, and it's just not even paying for anything. So it's literally abandonment, and it's a policy of abandonment at this point. Like, it's so hard to put a cap on prices, utilities, and rent. Yeah, of course. Like, you could absolutely do it. It's actually easy to do. And it's so funny because, like, there's this mythology that there's a consensus among economists that, oh, price caps and all this kind of stuff are actually bad. When you actually go read their papers, they literally admit that they work. They literally just admit that they work, and their argument for why you shouldn't do it is because it makes capitalists unhappy. Like, and that's straight out. Go read any article written on the subject, any article written by anyone. It begins by capitulating the point completely and saying that it all works, and then it goes down and says, but capitalists will be unhappy, so we can't do it. It's just like, what a fucking embarrassing. UBI could have solved this all pretty easily, even kept their capitalist grift going, but hey, let's keep trying to pedal this bike with no tires. Yeah. Well, or just light the tires on fire, right? That'll make them pedal faster if we light the tires on fire. Hey DJ, hey Demand Better, hey Major, how you guys all doing? I got a good influx of new people in here. I got a good influx of some of the old guard. Oh yeah, Tinker, you stick around. I'm full of very good points. I'm full of brilliant points. I'm a fucking genius. No, I shouldn't say that. This is the reason why you're never gonna hear these points said anywhere else. Because I'm an economist, okay? I believe in facts and evidence and science. I believe in actual things that are observable and predictable, right? Because that's the point of science, is to actually have something that is predictable. We do not live in an economy. We live in a capitalist death cult that is based on the religious ideology of neoliberalism. Neoliberalism was never an economic system. It was always a religious ideology, always. Its proponents were not educated, well-spoken scientific people. They were priests. They were acolytes of a death cult that erected a religious ideology to look like an economy and peddled it to us as if it was an economy, but it is in no way an economy, right? So the reason why you think I'm saying very good points is because I'm an economist. Hi. What we're churning out now out of the Fraser Institute or the University of Toronto or the University of British Columbia or the University of Calgary are religious acolytes. And if they disagree with the religious ideology of neoliberalism that's being crammed down their throats, they get thrown out of the system. We are living in, very explicitly, non-hyperbolically, a capitalist death cult. Thanks for coming. Glad you're here. Tax companies that increase prices and profits at the same time. I mean, like, stop talking about raising taxes, okay? Like, I get it. Like, there's the impulse in there to be like, oh, we could raise taxes. It's a very Keynesian kind of way of looking at things. Raise taxes on the companies and all that kind of stuff. Nationalize these guys. Nationalize these guys. Get them fucking out of the conversation completely. Like, goodbye, farewell. You are no longer part of the conversation. Like, I feel like I'm constantly seeing people who want to negotiate with, like, Jason Voorhees, right? That, like, Jason Voorhees shows up, murders one of their friends, and then everybody, instead of saying, we've got to find a way to kill Jason Voorhees, or at least trap him or something, they're saying, well, maybe we should negotiate with Jason Voorhees, right? Let's find out. Like, is there something that we could do to make sure that Jason Voorhees doesn't keep killing us? And then they try to negotiate negotiate with Jason Voorhees, right? And then Jason comes over, right? They give him like the little piecemeal reform thing, and then he kills one of them, right? And I just feel like I'm seeing the same thing over and over again. And now I feel like I'm standing in a room with scared, terrified people being like, oh man, what does he want? We've got to negotiate harder. He wants to kill you. That's what Jason wants. Jason wants you to die. It's time to figure this out. It's time to open your eyes and realize that the people who have power want you to die. Like Jason. You can't negotiate with them. They're not interested in that, right? And the only time that they will ever negotiate with you is if you have power over them. And frankly, if we get into a position where they're actually interested in negotiating with us because we have power, we should kill them. Metaphorically speaking, I don't want to get banned. Like, the mistake that the communists and the socialists made in the United States when FDR was the president is that they didn't kill capitalism. They stripped it down to its barest essence. They took the fire and they put it in the fireplace. They put a pen around it, right? They did everything they could to redistribute and all of this, and FDR did everything he could to save capitalism, and he did. And now we're paying for the consequences. We are paying for the sins of our fathers because they refused to kill the beast when they had the opportunity. They got tired. They got tired, is what happened. And the capitalists capitulated everything to them. They capitulated everything to them except one thing. We still control the means of production. You do all the work, we do nothing. And instead of us making billions of dollars, we'll make $100 million instead. Okay. But you still do all the work and I still do nothing. That's the arrangement. So, I mean, I'm really over this idea of like, let's just raise taxes on these companies. Let's nationalize these companies. Let's get rid of these guys. Nationalize the banks, the fossil fuel companies, the mining companies, and more. Yeah, the communications network, right? Like what Ryan Reynolds is out here, right, trying to tell people. Where did I see this? Yeah, there it is. Ryan Reynolds is out here asking Canadians to call MPs about Mint Mobile. Right? Ryan Reynolds' phone company, right? He can't actually get into Canada because of our monopolistic laws and rules. And so he's made an ad. I don't think I can play that ad for you, but where he's saying, go contact your representative. Like, let's get cheaper mobile in here. All of a sudden, of course, it's not going to work. Canada is a monopoly society. Our communications network is completely owned and controlled. And anytime I hear people trying to find like solutions or any of this kind of stuff, I'm just like, that's fucking embarrassing. We've just got to be prepared for the embargo that follows. I mean, I've said it over and over and over again, right? Like, who is going to embargo us? The United States. So 300 million people living in the United States are going to embargo us, Canada. Oh, who's this over here? Oh man, 1.6 billion people. Oh man, another 300 million people. Like, oh my God, most of the world's population right over fucking here. Like, this idea that like, oh no, the United States is going to embargo us. Like, if the United States embargoes Mexico, South America, Africa, China, Russia, Canada, right? If it embargoes all of that, well, who's isolated? Like, stop talking about America as if they actually have power, right? Like, the only power they have is the fact that they have military force. That's it. That's the only thing they've got going for them, is the fact that they've got nuclear bombs and are willing to use them. And like, can you imagine what would happen if the United States actually did do an embargo against Canada? Can you imagine what would actually happen if the United States started to actually do military action against Canada? Like, no one would trade with them ever again. Like, it literally would be the end of all of their relationships on the world stage. That would be it for them. Like, you wanna kill yourself economically? Go right ahead, right? We're trying to get out of this fire, right? If people want to stay in the fire, like the United States obviously does, then they're more than welcome to do so. We're going to go fucking trade with China. We're going to go fucking trade with Russia, right? Like, we're going to trade with Australia. Like, it'd be nice if the United States wasn't on this suicidal path of its own self-destruction, but it is. And there's nothing we can do about that. So, and like, my opinion is very straightforwardly, like, USA trying to start war with China and Russia, especially China because of economic power. It's not going to start a war with China. It literally can't. Like, it literally can't. Like, the best that the United States could possibly hope for is proxy wars at this point. Good for you. The Max got back from work. My last day is tomorrow. Starting a new job next week. Hopefully it's a step up for you, bud. Hopefully it's a step up for you. Glad you're here, bud. Hope things are going well. China just actually had a breakthrough in quantum computing, right? And this is really new news. So nobody knows about this. It had a breakthrough in quantum computing. The paper that it's submitted is being peer reviewed as we're speaking. But if the only reason the institute would come forward with the paper is if they believed it, right? It's not like the United States where they're running grifts and shit like this. And if China actually so what the paper means is that in a year's time, possibly even less than that, China could have access to computers that are 100 times faster than the computers that exist anywhere else on the planet, right? So this means in a very short period of time, like well before this like AUKUS nuclear submarine program actually manifests into anything, right? They are going to have computers that are going to point at American military technology and take it over 100 times faster than the Americans can respond to it. Like we're talking about the end of the military capability to invade China. Like literally, it will be over. It will not be possible to do. Like, shoot a rocket at it, it'll take it over. Shoot jets at it, they'll just take it over. Bring in an aircraft carrier, they'll take it over. These systems have computers, and if your computer is moving 100 times faster than their computer, hack it. You get it. Yeah, China also building buildings in a day, right? Like, China is building so effectively that occasionally it will I saw a great video where they actually not bombed, but they took down, they demolished, there's the word I was looking for. They demolished 20 buildings simultaneously. And I remember someone in the comments being like, oh, it's so wasteful and all this kind of stuff. And I literally was just like, dude, like, they're going to have that built back up in a week. Like, if they want to, right? Because they're, like, the difference between China and the United States is that China doesn't operate on this for-profit model. If they want something done, they go and do it, right? They understand that money is not necessarily real, that you can just prioritize things and use money as a tool in order to send people in the direction that you want them to go, that it's so much more about the opinion and the desires of the populace than it is about like financial mechanizing or anything like this. Like, the United States is going to go into a severe decline, and it's a decline that I don't know how they could possibly ever get out of it. Like, even if they decided to stop what they're doing militarily and stop what they're doing in terms of their assholishness on the world stage and actually came back to the world and started to stop acting like the international terrorists that they are, it's going to be 100 years before people trust these guys again. Like, you're gonna need an entire guard of ruling class to die off. Like, it's going to take like an enormous amount of time for this old guard to die off in the United States before people. Yeah, China proved during the pandemic what a command economy can achieve. Exactly. And like, they are going to continuously embarrass the United States. And these things are going to get, embarrassment is the word. Like, it's going to get more and more embarrassing as time moves forward. Like, it's going to get incredibly embarrassing. China has so many regional issues. They are not a military threat to the U.S. at all. Well, I mean, and China doesn't have the desire to, like, invade shit and do all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know why China would even be thinking along those lines. Like, Their Belt and Road Initiative strategy is so much smarter. Like it's such a much better way of interacting with the world. Like it's more efficient. You create better outcomes. You actually get what you want, right? Like, what's going to happen in Afghanistan is absolutely going to be is absolutely going to be what I'm talking about, right? That like America was in Afghanistan for 20 years in an effort to subjugate this nation and steal its resources. It got fuck all, right? Maybe it got some opium, right, from the CIA-funded opium farms and all this kind of shit. China is going to build a rail from Kashgar Prefecture to Kabul, and in 5 years, Afghanistan is going to look like a different country. And on top of that, China is going to get what it wants out of Afghanistan, which is its access to lithium, its access to other resources, uranium, right? Like, it's going to be a complete embarrassment for the United States. The United States is going to, like, the entire world is going to look at Afghanistan and think, oh shit, the Chinese got way further ahead with this than the Americans ever did. And they did it with peaceful building, right? Like, you don't need to ride a fucking rocket into a place and blow the shit out of it. You can peacefully trade. It's going to be incredible to see what happens over the next 10 years, because it looks as though the rest of the Middle East is actually getting ready for an expansion of the Belt and Road Initiative into it. That it's already been built into Tehran from the north, right? And it's going to go from Kabul into Tehran. And then likely the Americans are eventually going to have to concede Iraq and actually leave in disgrace because they're a disgraceful nation. And from Tehran to Baghdad will happen. And then from Baghdad to Nome, which is the new city that Saudi Arabia is actually building right here, so that they can go around Jordan and Israel and then get into the Suez Canal and into Cairo and then ultimately into all of Africa. Like, the changes that are coming because of China's infrastructure building is going to be very incredible. Very incredible. Yeah, it's much better. Like, luckily, it doesn't change my stance on basic income. Talking to a lot of co-workers about it, and they agree it should happen with rent controls. Yeah. Like, that would be one way of actually just... And I think the thing that makes it appealing to many people is that it would be easy to do. And we saw how easy it was to do, right? We saw how easy the CERB was to pass. We saw how easy it was. And then something like rent controls are easy. It's just you've got to negotiate with the psychopath class. Yeah. And they could handle high magnitude earthquakes, no cement. Yeah. China proved during the pandemic what a command economy. Absolutely. Our hospital here has been hacked. The hospital had to cancel a ton of appointments. Yeah. Imagine quantum hacking. Yeah, exactly. With that computer power, they could build machines at a much faster rate than the US. AI will be decades, if not centuries, ahead of the US. USA won't let it happen. Well, so Tinker, like, how can they stop it is the question, right? The USA won't let it happen. The USA no longer has the economic power in order to maintain any of this shit, right? They don't have the military power. Like, the retirement rates as well as the amount of rates of people leaving the military are extremely high. Like, it's not about the power of their economy or how much money or all that kind of stuff. It's literally that people are no longer participating in the United States military anymore. For as high a warlike culture that the United States actually is, people are seeing, especially with this Middle East stuff, how fraudulent the whole thing is. There was no honor here. There was nothing here, right? It was wasted blood and wasted gold for nothing. Like, the USA will support civil war, like a civil war where? Because, like, they're about to go through their own internal civil war as it stands right now. Like, the blue mega cult and the mega cult are going to fight one another, and it's going to be bloody. It's going to be really, really bloody. Yeah, renewable energy will pay for itself, but we are so slow. Oh yeah, like, we're going to, like, the United States and Canada are going to be like the redneck hicks, right? Just like we're literally isolating ourselves on our continent while the rest of the world actually advances itself. Oh, I know, buddy. I know. Hold on, guys. Sorry. My dog is losing his little mind. Is it peanut butter? Is that what it is? Do you need peanut butter? There's all kinds of peanut butter here. What are you whining about? What are you whining about? Is it just cuddles? Is it just cuddles and love? Oh. Flying high through the sky, it's Astropug. Astropug. Do 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 do. You got to do a pug break. You got to do a pug break every so often. I mean, yeah, China has been steadily just increasing the amount of allies it has, right? Like, and it's getting to the point where it's completely divided, right? That you've got Europe, and it's the classic allies versus everybody else, right? You got Europe, the United States, Canada, and Australia versus the rest of the world. I'm just thinking about learning Chinese and moving there if possible. Oh, yeah. I actually have friends who did exactly that, and they're quite happy. Because, like, what we're starting to see is that China is stable. China is stable. 2 out of 3 Canadians stressed about inflationary rise of food, fuel, and housing costs. So that means 1 in 3 are not. So that means a full 30% of the society are living in a delusional dream world. Right? Like, if you're not concerned about inflation, the rising costs of housing, food, and fuel, that means you are detached from reality completely. And 30% of us are that way. That's a lot. Like, 30% is enough to get like a majority in this country and to actually rule the country. So it's likely that it's the wealthy who are not concerned about it. Why? Because they've got all the shit. And they're the ones who are actually going to fund the politicians. So Tinker, this is new for you, but welcome to 7 o'clock. 7 o'clock I play some of my music. I feel like this one. I wrote this song after I got laid off from my job because of COVID, which I've been working on for about 5 years. My girlfriend left me. Not because she hates me, but because she turned out to be a lesbian. So I wrote this song amidst all of that. Whoa! Gotta sleep another month inside this car. The wage they pay me with don't get me very far. The chains that hold me break me down, but they don't scar. Can't even drink away my blues inside a bar. And this year sucks. This year sucks. Can you blame a man for trying to give it up? And this year sucks. Another day won't help that pain inside your back. The days get harder, but it's too hard to keep track. They keep you tired before your soul opens a crack. And God don't care what monkeys think about the facts. And this year sucks. This year sucks. Can you blame a man for trying to give it up? And this year sucks. your pile of bones and bloody gold, and human sacrifice don't stop you being old. At least you'll die before the bomb you set explodes. We're gonna burn to death while doing what we're told, and this year sucks. This year sucks. Can you blame a man for trying to give it up? And this year sucks. It burns down anyway. It burns down anyway. It burns down anyway. It burns down anyway. Ugh. Yeah, man, fuck these guys, eh? Fuck these guys. I know you like that one, Pissed Off. I know you like that one, bud. That's like a classic one by this point. Oh, man. What? I'm gonna play one more. I don't know what I want to play, though. Any requests? Anybody got any requests? I know a bunch of you have heard a lot of this before, so... no. You know what? I was thinking about this one earlier. I'm going to play this one. This is entitled very simply, I'm Sad. Pretending we'll go back to before. Psychopath nations shatter hard upon the floor. Dumb politicians trick us all with stupid grins. They'll run for cover while we pay for their sins, and I'm sad. Everybody let us down. I'm sad. We burn the whole world down. Keep on working, pay no attention to the smoke. Just keep on working, nobody cares if you're still broke. Just keep on working, come on, what is wrong with you? Just keep on working, try not to think about the truth, and I'm sad. Everybody let us down. I'm sad. We burn the whole world down. God has no mercy for those who kill themselves, laughs at us loudly as we build a perfect hell. Tear down the gardens replaced with empty stone. Run to your bunkers built with our blood and bones. There's no forgiveness for us at all. at all. There's no forgiveness for us at all. There's no forgiveness for us at all. You know what I do want to play? I think I want to play... I haven't played Antarctica in a while. Yeah. I'm going to play Antarctica. Got asked a question by my niece who's 5 years old. What's the world gonna be like when I'm grown? I looked up at the crimson smoke-filled sky. I thought, what's the harm in telling one more lie? I said, everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? The burning sun won't leave a paper trail. Why work so hard if it's too big to fail? And what's the point of feeding this machine if it won't make the world in our dreams where everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets? You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? And I know one day my maker I will meet, when death's sweet kiss comes and sweeps me off my feet. I hope by then we learn a little more. I'd like this place to be better than before, so everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? When everybody's safe, no one's living in the streets. You never need to worry if you're gonna get to eat. And Antarctica is covered in ice, and everybody's happy, and wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? Antarctica is covered in ice. Everybody's happy, and Wouldn't that be nice? And Major, the one song I thought I could use a whistle part, forget the name. I forget the name too, actually. I forget the name, but for you, friend, I will definitely play that tune, bud. That's... Oh, yeah, this is it. This is the one you want to hear. Okay. No, you stop. You stop. This is the one that's getting in your head, eh, Major? Okay, cool. It's so interesting because this one I actually don't have that much confidence in performing, and I got to get that whistle part going on and all that kind of stuff. But for you, friend, as you've requested it, hey Lonnie, how you doing? Good to see you. Just in time for How Will You Witness the End of the World? We've done with dreaming of what life... No, I'm screwing it up. Sorry, guys. See, I haven't played in a while. Look, what'd I just tell you? We've done with dreaming of what life could have been. There it is. We've done with dreaming of what life could have been. We kept our heads buried in the sand. Now that it's over, we never made a scene. Of course, our leaders have it all in hand. How will you witness the end of the world? I hope you bring a friend. Say, will you join me to watch our crops burn? The grapes light up like candles on the vine. Why sell yourself for money that you'll never earn? Why keep on pretending this is fine? How will you witness the end of the world? I hope you'll bring a friend. Shed no more tears for our collective fate. Just live for what today might bring. What's to be said to those who choose to wake up late? What gentle words will cover up the sting? How will you witness the end of the world? I hope you'll bring a friend. How will you witness the end of the world? I hope you'll bring a friend. That has a real like Scott Pilgrim versus the world. Like that could fit in with like a weird oddball kind of indie film. Just like he's sitting here, she's sitting there, right? They're looking at like things as they're like blowing up in the distance, and he just like gently reaches over and like takes her hand, and like she like cuddles in, and he's just like, okay. And then like the supernova comes and wipes them both out. I hope you guys are doing well out there. Harry, trying to turn us away from the music. I don't blame you, bud. I don't blame you. I do worry sometimes that there are people out there who are like, what the fuck? What's with the guitar? What's with the guitar? Why? Suddenly I'm singing? What the fuck? Well, that's who I am. You know what, man? I want to sing this one. This will be the last one. I promise. Unless somebody actually requests something. I have come to really love this one. And, is it, sorry. It's not that one. Although I do like that one. But this is the one I was actually thinking about. Which is Psychopath Nation. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Burn yourself out for dollar bills. Kill your children for a few cheap thrills. You got a problem, well that's too bad. You're too tired to see you've been had. Work or starve while we drop bombs. No such thing as right or wrong. We'll call you lazy while you work to death. You gotta earn yourself a moment of rest. And I won't work for a psychopath nation. No, I won't work for a psychopath nation. Burn those corpses so you can speed. Buy that garbage you don't need. Play the victim while you lose your grip. Why won't they work in the apocalypse and retreat into your stupid lies? Act confused while your children cry. You promise change but you act the same. You gaslight, deflect and take no blame. And I won't work for a psychopath nation. No, I won't work for a psychopath nation. We collapse in the devil's lap as we watch the world burn to ash. You'll whine like bitches on your way to the grave. Why won't those serfs just behave? You fucking vampires, demons and ghouls. We're done with being treated like fools. We're done. The curse is lifted. We're free from your spell. Keep on crying while you burn in hell. And we won't work for your psychopath nation. Yeah, we won't work for your psychopath nation. Yeah, I won't work for your psychopath nation. I love the tunes. Thanks, Harry. That's nice. I always worry when new people come in and they don't know that, like, at some point, I'm gonna play like an hour of music. If you guys like that, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. My Patreon is down below. If you like those songs and you'd like to find those songs, you can head to Bandcamp. It's in the description. Bandcamp, or the CanadianComedy.bandcamp. Yeah, people are actually buying them. How about that? People are actually buying them. So it's nice. And I'm gonna be if you are a $5 Patreon, if you give me $5 a month, I'll just send you those tunes. So pick your poison. Pick your poison. Or just hang out. Just hang out. Right? Just be chill. I hate doing the capitalism part of that. I gotta tell you guys, I hate it. I hate it so much. I understand why it has to be done, and I've got to do it, but it's just like, I don't like selling myself as a commodity to people. I don't like selling myself as a commodity. Oh well. Enough whining about that. All right, Harry, what the heck have you been talking about, bud? All right, here we go. Albertans are on the hook for delinquent energy bills that were accrued during the pandemic utility deferral program. People who scraped to pay their bills are now covering the income shortfalls. Wasn't capitalism supposed to sink or swim? What's the sense of privatization of public resources if the citizen has to cover up corporate losses? We're neck deep in the fourth wave of COVID. You'll bet they're cutting people's heat off this winter. Well, bud, like, the end game of any system of capital is fascism, right? I don't really like to distinguish between fascism and capitalism because I actually think that they are the same system. Much in the same way that like your hand and your arm are like technically different, but like there's a connection, right? And the merger of the public and the private sector is a major component of what makes fascism, right? If you think about what phrases like socialism for the rich, right? Like socialism for the rich is fascism because you are propping up the wealth of billionaires through business models, right? Which is what it's all about. Like, I'm quite serious when I say that we are in a period of abandonment, that what the economy is structured to do is extract as much wealth out of the nation as it can. That's what it's designed for, right? That it's not actually interested in being a proper economy, which is cyclical, right? Where like somebody actually makes a product and then that product gets sold to like a baker, and that baker, he goes over here and gets a coffee, and like there's a nice little community circle. That's not what's happening. That it's about extraction. Yeah, if a company is considered too big to fail, it should be nationalized, of course. Like, imagine that. Like, imagine believing anything other than that. That, like, yeah, a $500 billion multinational corporation should be privately owned. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? What the fuck are you actually talking about? Elon Musk now is worth the same as the country of Pakistan. Like, what the fuck are you actually talking about? And then the same people who support this idea that we should just let a single individual actually have control of this much wealth will then turn around and pretend as though that's how we're going to maximize freedom, right? Oh, you can't let power accrue under a tiny group of people, which is why we got rid of kings, right? And why democracy is so good. But people should be free to accrue as much wealth as the country of Pakistan, right? And that's considered rational and normal. Like, we have brain rot as a people. Like, our brains are rotten. Like, and it doesn't seem like there's any recourse to this. It doesn't seem like we're suddenly going to not have rotted brains. And so, like, I always say to people, like, talk to your neighbors, right? Find out who your neighbors are. Those are the people who are really going to matter. Like, those people are really going to matter as we move forward. And it's just going to get more hysterical and more ridiculous as time goes forward. And especially as these liberals do everything they can to pretend like they've got in hand when really all they're doing is just reading cue cards given to them by the fossil fuel industry. Like, it's just going to be absurd. Yeah. A survey of Canadians to understand their biggest financial stressors and found that inflation is weighing heavily on our minds. Yeah, the devaluation of the currency. As Canada's inflation rate soared to an 18-year high, increased cost of living is a source of financial stress for 2 out of 3, 67% Canadians, more than double that of any financial stressor. Following inflation, then it's saving for retirement. Retirement. That's a funny idea. That's cute. It's cute that, like, there's still people who think that they're going to be able to retire. Like, that's fun. Inability to absorb unforeseen expenses, unpredictability of investments. So 25% of people are actually responding to this, that a major financial stressor for them is not inflation, but rather unpredictability of investments. So 25% of our society is detached. Just detached. Like, the unpredictability of investments. This is what you're concerned about? Oh, okay. Yeah, an inability to save as much as pre-pandemic and high interest consumer debt. Like, this is a major crisis that we are not going to be able to solve, because capitalism eventually destroys itself. Right? That's how it's structured. That's what it's designed to do. That's the end game of all capitalist systems. That eventually, if all of the money funnels into a single person, right, or a single enterprise, then it loses its value. Because what gives money its value is the fact that people trust it to be able to actually get goods and services for themselves. But if a small group of people have the majority of the money and they're not trading that money to you for anything other than your labor, and eventually, of course, they're refusing to even pay you a wage for it, right? So it's collapsing into what? Oh, slavery, right? Or more accurately, it's going to be a neo-feudal structure. Like, we're collapsing into a neo-feudal structure, if we haven't already gotten there. And in the middle of it, British Columbia poised to lose white rhino of old growth forests, right? Here's one of the tricks that they're pulling on us, by the way, in case you thought that there was a glimmer of hope that the Liberals were actually being anything but complete disingenuous bullshitters. So they have got it set up so that they can, what they're using is the phrase net zero, right? We're seeing a lot of net zero. And so what they do is they go into old growth forests, right? Where there's a lot of diversity, where there's a lot of that going on. They clear cut it, right? So they just like mow it right down, turn it into the backside of a moon. And then they turn around and plant a monoculture, so like birch or something, right? And they call that net zero, right? So absolutely destroy the ecosystem completely, ensure that they'll never actually recover, and then plant a stupid monoculture and expect that to actually work and call it net zero. So on paper, right, like this is the nonsense. I don't know why, but this thing down here just flipped over to like game stats. I don't understand why. I don't actually care about hockey or anything. So if you're looking at that being like, oh, John likes hockey, like, I don't care at all. I actually can't care less. It's not actually possible. I love listening to people who love hockey. I love listening to them because I always end up thinking like, man, imagine if these guys paid attention to their politicians this way. Imagine if they like kept stats about politicians. Imagine if they actually like had like debates of the quality that happen over hockey games, but instead it's their politicians. Like, we would have a much different culture. Our culture would look a lot different. Oh yeah, this is the Ryan Reynolds, the stupid phone. Yeah, Elizabeth May slams Canadian climate targets after Trudeau's COP26 address, right? That's not good enough as a target. Yeah, no, of course it isn't. May compared Canada's targets to those set by U.S. President Joe Biden. The Biden administration pledged to cut its greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030. May joined CTV's Power Play from Glasgow, where she's attending. Do we have the video?
Joining me now from the conference in Scotland.
You know what? I'm going to take a bit of a brief break. We're going to let this one go. I actually have come to really like this guy. I don't know what his name is, but anytime I see him, I'm just like, oh, this guy seems not too much of a dip.
Party parliamentary leader Elizabeth May, who has made the trip there. Great to have you on the program. What did you make of Justin Trudeau's promises today? There's the first promise. Let's start with number one, cap on oil and gas emissions. I know we've done that in the election. No details, though. What's your take?
Well, there are no details, and what's disappointing is the focus on oil and gas emissions, because what we really need to do is look at oil and gas production, and that's what the world is calling for. We know what's causing the climate emergency, and certainly Justin Trudeau very movingly evoked what happened to Lytton, BC, that we lost an entire town, a community, in 15 minutes before the fire truck could get out of the station. The station burned to the ground with fire truck in it. I mean, this is harrowing for us in British Columbia. I would have hoped it would have moved the Prime Minister to do more than existing promises if we're going to step up at COP26. What the world leaders are calling for, including Justin Trudeau, is that countries do more and faster. And right. I'm afraid that the commitment to look at oil and gas emissions without focusing on Canada's obligation to phase out oil and gas production, and way faster than looking at a 2050 target. It was lacking from his speech.
Okay, but I did ask Stephen Guilbeault, the new environment minister, about that. And I said, look, I understand there's capping on emissions, but there's not anything on production. His answer is, the federal government doesn't regulate production. That's a provincial jurisdiction. What we can do is regulate emissions. Essentially what they're saying is, we will put a cap on emissions. We have no idea what it is, but I think their idea, you tell me, is the emissions caps are going to be so onerous that they're essentially choking off investment in oil and gas. Now, I know that sounds incredibly difficult for that industry, but that's how I think Guilbeault is interpreting production. But you tell me.
Well, I mean, the reality is that Canada's target is too low. It's the lowest target in the G7. Here's Joe Biden speaking right ahead of Justin Trudeau and saying that the United States is going to cut emissions in half by 2030. And Canada is prepared to accept something as low as 40% below 2030. That's not good enough as a target. On top of that, we really realized that, Joe Biden got elected, kept his promise to cancel the Keystone Pipeline, and Canada complained, and vociferously. So if we're going to step up and appear to be and really be climate leaders, we have to be guided by the science. We have to do everything we can. I mean, goodness gracious, a very conservative prime minister in Boris Johnson called strongly for understanding that we have to hang on to 1.5 degrees, and that will not be easy, and that requires doing many things differently, including moving off fossil fuels rapidly. And frankly, Evan, it's not a problem of trying to choke off investment to the oil and gas industry. Investors are running away from fossil fuels. They are running towards renewables. And countries like Canada that prop up oil and gas with subsidies while giving a pittance to renewables are in the way of a major disruptive change to our economy in a move that the market wants to see of renewable energy.
Yeah, I only have you for a minute. I know in the U.S. is committing to 50%. A lot of people mention that. A lot of environmentalists say that is true. It's more than Canada, but they have low-hanging fruit that Canada has already plucked. For example, we closed carbon fire electric generating plants, for example, in the province of Ontario. I know there's still 4 provinces that do it, but they haven't. So they're going to close coal. So, they're starting from a much different position than Canada. And so, you have clean prosperity people like Michael Bernstein saying actually 45% is actually pretty good for Canada, given that we've already done a lot of work on the coal side.
Except that our emissions are much higher than those of the United States. We're the country that is 21% above our 1990 emissions. No other G7 country is at 21% above 1990. The US is 4% above 1990. The UK is more than 45% below 1990 emission levels. So we haven't done a great job. The reality is we are laggards. We can do much, much more. And Clean Prosperity Initiative has given the government a good grade to our target. But if our target is, as scientists will tell you, it is far too low to achieve 1.5 degrees, it doesn't matter what our target is. I mean, people keep using wartime analogies, Evan, and I keep thinking, okay, at the beginning of the Second World War, who was closer to their target? Neville Chamberlain, who said we're fine to accept appeasement, or Winston Churchill, this wild-eyed radical, who said we will fight, we will fight, we will defeat Nazis, we will defeat fascism. At that point, I don't think Winston Churchill had a plan. And those people who want to judge a plan against a weak target may be satisfied where Canada is today at the opening of COP. I hope we will do better in the next 2 weeks.
I'm glad that Elizabeth May is starting to use war analogies, man. We need a war economy. The idea that we are literally funding and subsidizing the fossil fuel industry, get rid of those. Get rid of the subsidies for fossil fuel. I don't know why this is controversial at all. And people will stand up and say the most insipid bullshit, hostage-taking shit you've ever heard. Well, what about the jobs? Literally support those people. As part of your policy of take the subsidies that you are giving to the fossil fuel industry, give it to the workers then, right? Shut up about it. I can't imagine a more embarrassing take. We are going to destroy ourselves and the planet because jobs. Shut the fuck up. Like, shut the fuck up. It's unbelievable how hard people are bending over backwards to destroy themselves. And like this leads me down like a path of like, yeah, Nazi Germany created a lot of jobs. That's exactly true, Garden Mice. You know what I love about you, Garden Mice, is that you always come in nice and quiet. I picture you as a garden mouse, just like living in like a little garden over here. And then you just pop out and you go, Nazi Germany created a lot of jobs. And then you scuttle away. And it's how it is every single time. And that's exactly right. Like, fucking Nazi Germany created lots of jobs. Like, what's this mania for jobs, by the way? I wonder how they did that. Yeah, what's this mania for jobs? What's this insane, insipid mania for jobs? Like, why is it that everything... That's how I want to be perceived? Amazing. What is it about our culture and our society that is so manic, that where the only way we accept the idea of wealth being distributed into the populace, the only way we accept people having access to things like food and shelter, is if they have a job working for a system that is actively destroying us. Like, it's insane what we're doing. It's insane. And it's becoming unhinged in a way. Like, I was very, very shocked to see these liberals talking about like the old neoliberal death cult stuff of like, yeah, we need to create jobs and get the economy back up and running. I'm just like, you guys are nightmare psychopaths. Like the capitalist economy is what got us in this mess in the first place. Like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And it just looks like our NDP and any opposition to this is just so tepid and weak. And there just comes a point where I have to start saying, I think this is what Canadians want. I think that Canadians, I worry constantly that the boomers are falling into just like a sense of denialism because they know they'll be dead soon anyway. So none of this really matters to them. So they're just completely detached, right? They don't care. They don't care. And then you have the millennials who seem to be falling into a kind of nihilism, right? Who seem to be falling into kind of like, well, at least we'll be dead soon, right? That kind of statement. While Gen Z seems to just be retreating into forms of absurdism, right? Where they don't know how to respond to this. And so they're just turning to mockery and like a Dadaism sort of way of living. And all of that, to me, spells total disaster. Because everyone is just so disillusioned and disenfranchised that they've lost the ability to fight back in meaningful ways. And at this stage in the game, yeah, everyone forgets about Gen X. You're right, Lonnie. You're right. That's like the most Gen X thing you could have possibly said, by the way. Like, it is, that might as well be the Gen X slogan, right? But that's just it, is that I think Gen X is like, even if they're aware, there is like this just kind of like Daria-esque style shrugging, sighing that happens amongst Gen X, where they're just like, whatever, and just fucking like, it's, you're right though. No, again, like, and I'm glad to see that Elizabeth May is still fighting. I'm glad to see that people are still listening to her. I'm glad to see that she's hitting the points and all of that kind of stuff. But like, we don't, she straight up needs to be like turning into a revolutionary leader, right? Like, we're not going to resolve this through electoralism. It's just not going to happen. Like, it isn't going to happen. That surrounding the halls of power is what needs to happen, and leaders like Trudeau, right, the Bidens, and future President Trump, right, in his second term, all these guys, like, there is no way right? Like when Biden stands up and says we're going to reduce emissions by 50% by 2030, that's completely unserious. I don't know why anyone would take that seriously. I don't know why anyone would believe him, right? The Democrats are going to get swept out of office in 2024. They're going to lose the House in the midterms, which are coming up real soon. So, like, what do you think the Trump administration is going to do? You think they're going to be like, oh, let's go along with the rest of the world and actually believe in climate change? Since when? Like, we are going to be completely pilloried here. And the idea that we're still, like, imagine if you found out during World War II that Canada was actually funding the Nazis the whole time. Right? Like, imagine we sent troops over there and we had a war effort and all that kind of stuff, and then you found out that your country was actually funding the Nazis the whole time. Like, what would you think about that? That's essentially what we're doing. Like, the funding of the subsidization of the fossil fuel industry, it's grotesque. It's obscene. Like, our children have every right to spit on us as we allow our nation to continue subsidizing the very thing that's destroying us. Like, and in no way are we meaningfully interested in transitioning while we are subsidizing the problem. Like, not interested in it. What we need is to erect a war economy so that we can actually credibly fight this issue. But Prince Trudeau is not interested in that. He's not interested in that at all. He's just going to read from his cue cards, right? The fossil fuel industry, they've got it all in hand, whatever, and then he goes to brunch. Right? He's not a competent leader, and he doesn't actually care. Yeah, this is nuts. Industry that contributes around 4% to Canada's GDP gets about a 15% top up to revenues from governments. Not to mention that from a climate perspective, that industry is a lead weight clapped to Canadians' necks. End the misery. Let it die. Like, what's this going to take? Like, what's this genuinely going to take? Like, our like, Trudeau is like eloquently writing speeches about the town of Lytton and how it burnt down. Well, next it's going to be Kamloops, right? Next it's going to be a town like Kamloops, and then it's going to be Vancouver, right? It's going to be a borough of Vancouver, right? So, like, at what point do we realize that participating in this is akin to suicide, right? Like, quit your job, go on strike, sabotage your workplace. Like, there's no reason to participate. Like, what reason do you have? Your society has turned on you. You are doomed from the outset. And if you can't quit your job, and if you can't go on strike, right, sabotage your workplace. Force them to fire you. Like, we each and every one of us need to be involved in this protest movement with the goal of surrounding the halls of power. Because it's obviously they don't care. Like, it's obvious that it's all grifting. Like, it's obvious at this point. Elon Musk says he'll spend $6 billion to fight world hunger conditionally. But he just made 4 times that amount today alone. So maybe he should just pay his damn taxes? Right? Like, there's this egotistical narcissism that is happening amongst the wealthy, right? And that includes Trudeau and Biden and all these guys, right? They genuinely believe that, oh, the earth won't actually burn us down. Like, it won't actually happen. We've got control of this. We can negotiate with the sun, right? We can negotiate with the sun, guys, right? Like, the sun will understand that we're trying. The sun will understand that we're trying. This is a conversation I have all the time on this channel, man. Like, we do not respect that the universe and the earth that we stand on is far more powerful than we are. Like, way more powerful than we are. Way more powerful than we are. Like, We're literally walking around like hanging our dicks out, being like, yeah, we're in charge, and the Earth is just like, they think they're in charge. Like, it's comical how stupid we are in this regard. Like, it's a cartoon. Like, and when the Earth, like, and everything that's happened up until this point is just the Earth like just being like, hey, like, have you noticed? Like, here's the thing, right? Like COVID, for example. COVID was just like the flu +1, right? Like, and it completely obliterated the capitalist system. Like, completely dominated and destroyed it. And it was the flu +1, right? What do you think is going to happen if the Earth just produces like the flu +2 or the flu +3, right? What happens if you think we actually get like an actual plague up in this bitch, right? Like, and forget about like the weather, right? Like, imagine living in like an enclosed area, and you have a lever, and every time you pull the lever, right, right? And some like a little toy dances, and you're like, ha 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 ha, right? Great. And every time you pull the lever, the skies get darker, right? There's lightning storming. It heats up in the building, and you're just like, ha 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 ha. That's what we're doing. Like, it couldn't be dumber. Like, we can't be stupider. The Earth is giving us so many signals and giving us so many chances. I can't even begin to express to you how many chances the Earth is giving us. And eventually the Earth is just going to go, okay, ice shield, right? Or fucking just fire, right? It's just going to, it'll be like, well. And then it'll be like that for like 1,000,000 years or however long. And then the cycle will renew itself. And the Earth will be like, well, maybe the next group won't be so fucking stupid, right? And it'll be like the cockroaches or something, and the cockroaches will attain sentience and actually start talking to one another, right? Like, we're not that important. Certainly not to the Earth, right? That, like, in the grand scheme of things, we haven't been around that long. And I'm sure the Earth would absolutely love it if one of its expressions actually managed to not destroy itself. I think it would be super happy about that. But doesn't look like that's on the cards. Humans are extremely stupid. Like, extremely stupid. Is there another species on Earth that destroys itself like this? Does that exist? Maybe it's built in. Maybe we're supposed to destroy ourselves. Like, maybe it's just like we're supposed to like build AI and robotics and all that kind of shit, and then the system is designed to exterminate us so that all that's left is like the AI, and then the AI takes over and becomes like the full expression of the Earth. What do you guys think? Oh, this is creepy, dude. Fox Guest enthusiastically spins a new survey showing 23% of Americans expect to never retire. What a great country where we have the opportunity to keep working. We don't have to retire like generations before us. This is a great blessing. You should embrace it. This guy is a psychopath, right? Like, this is a psychotic thing to say. It's just absolutely grotesque and just getting to levels of absurdism that can't even be, like, how does this guy actually find his way out of the house, right? Like, either he's just, like, got a nail in his head, or he's a fucking nightmare creature. It's probably a combination of either, right? If they're letting him on Fox, certainly. Oh, yes. COP26. Rich countries shift goalposts with new climate finance target. Meaningful climate action must be financed, but wealthy countries aren't pulling their weight. I don't know what else I can say about it, honestly. Oh, you know what? I'm going to shift gears completely. Get ready for this one, guys. Trigger warning. Trigger warning. And you know if I'm saying trigger warning, it's a fucking trigger warning. Belly of the Beast spotlights forced sterilizations in California prisons. A new PBS documentary encapsulates more than a decade of efforts to hold California prisons accountable for these abuses. 20 years ago, Kelly Dillon started to feel abdominal pain. Dillon, who was 24 at the time, was serving a sentence at Central California Women's Facility, the largest women's prison in the world, for shooting and killing her husband while defending herself against domestic abuse. The prison gynecologist told Dillon she had an abdominal pap smear and needed a biopsy to look for cancer. Then he asked if Dillon wanted more children, and she did. She had been separated from her 2 boys. In her 15 years at CCWF, she would only see them 5 times. And she dreamed of being able to raise a family, hands-on, when she was free. The doctor created a plan with Dillon. If he found cancer, he would do a hysterectomy. In 2001, Dillon and 4 other women were put in chains to go out for surgery. "Everything is an assembly line," she said. Nurses rushed her through the paperwork and soon she was under anesthesia. When she came to, she immediately felt uneasy. "When I came out, I felt like something was wrong," she said. "He told me everything is fine. We took out some cysts." Dillon asked the doctor if she would still be able to have children. "Yeah, I don't see why not," she remembers him saying. For almost a year after the surgery, Dillon didn't menstruate. She had panic attacks, lost 100 pounds, and sweated at night. All symptoms of surgical menopause. Dillon sent a letter to Cynthia Chandler, co-founder of Justice Now, a non-profit in California focused on abolition and providing legal assistance to people in women's prisons. With Chandler's urging, Dillon requested her medical records. Dillon never had cancer, and yet her ovaries and part of her fallopian tubes had been removed. She didn't find out until Chandler went through her medical records with her during a legal visit in prison. "I had been intentionally sterilized, and I have been lied to," Dillon said. Dillon's experience is the focus of a new PBS documentary, Belly of the Beast, debuting in an online release October 16th. While incarcerated, Dillon connected other prisoners who'd been sterilized with Justice Now, and their voices are featured in the film. These procedures happened so frequently that some referred to them as the surgery of the month. Now, 44, Dillon says it feels ordained that this film will release not long after a whistleblower alleged that a gynecologist performed hysterectomies on detained migrants without their full consent at a Georgia immigration detention center. In 2013, the Center for Investigative Reporting revealed a pervasive culture of forced sterilizations throughout women's prisons in California that have remnants of the eugenics movement. Prisoners in California reported being asked to consent to these surgeries while under anesthesia for other medical procedures, including C-sections. The OBGYN at Valley State Prison, James Heinrich, told CIR that the $147,460 the state paid for sterilization procedures from 1997 to 2010 was minimal compared to what you save in welfare paying for these unwanted children as they procreate more. The flood of media attention following this investigation led to a state audit and legislation that would criminalize this procedure in state prisons. Dillon, now out of prison, testified before California state legislatures when it seemed like legislation had stalled. "I wanted a second chance at life. I wanted a second chance at being a mother," Dillon told lawmakers in 2014. "I trusted this surgeon to respect and to acknowledge that I still had a future and that I wanted one. I feel like I've been robbed of the fullness that could have been given me if this had not happened to me. Did this happen because I was African American? Did this happen to me because I was a woman? Did it happen to me because I was an inmate? Or did it happen to me because I was all three?" That same year, Governor Jerry Brown signed a bill ending forced prison sterilizations, but, as the film shows, that didn't necessarily change attitudes on the inside. As to whether I think it should be illegal, not necessarily. a former correctional nurse speaking on the condition of anonymity said in the film, even if it's not medically necessary, it could or would, in the long run, save the state funds. The ideal time to do it to them is when you're already in there. It just takes a couple more minutes, a couple more snips. As of last year, Dylan and Justice Now began work on legislation that would provide redress for those involuntarily sterilized in California. Belly of the Beast encapsulates more than a decade of efforts to hold California prisons accountable for their abuses. In conversation with the 19th, Dylan and the film's director and producer Erica Cohn discussed the pandemic, the eugenics movement, and the alleged hysterectomies in a Georgia ICE detention center. I'm going to end it there because this is a big, long interview. So much for America's claims of, China's doing sterilization efforts and all of this. Yeah, the American prison system is too, right? Even if, that just makes us equals, although there isn't any evidence it's actually happening in China. It's that classic fascist strategy, right? Blame others for which you are guilty of. And the fact that it's happening in ICE detention centers ramps them up to concentration camp level. Like, that's some concentration camp shit. Literally, like, kidnap immigrants, put them in detention centers, perform sterilization on them. Like, and literally people are saying out loud, it's cheaper to do it this way. Like, the full dehumanization of these people in exchange for what? The worship of money. It's just worship. Hey, Mystic Werewolf. Hey, Loaf. How you guys doing? I don't want children. I'll just adopt some kids when I'm 70. Someone take care of me when I'm old. Also, John, I just came here to let you know I'm quitting social media and want you to thank you for answering and interacting with me despite having different views. Have a great life, mate. Goodbye. Oh, Mystic. I hope you'll come back someday. Good luck on your life, friend. Good luck in the world. Strange times indeed. Strange times to be a young man. Strange times indeed. I must admit that's kind of made me a little sad, I have to tell you. Not in a, like... I'm not gonna, like, weep about it, but I rather liked Mystic Werewolf. I thought he was a good man. Good kid. Good kid. Trying hard and being genuine. But I understand why you want to get off social media these days. I understand why you want to try to exist in life as it is, right? Try to exist in the world, right? It is actually quite nice to just go down to the beach, get out to the park, right? Try to forget. Try to forget. I know that I've tried to do that in my life. Tried to run away from what I see in social media and run away from what I see and all that kind of stuff, especially as it gets worse and worse. But I've just gotten to a point in my life where I can no longer do that. It's just not part of the deal for me anymore. That eventually it came to the point for me, because I did that. I ignored social media. I ignored all that kind of stuff. But eventually it came to the point for me where it was actually harder to ignore it. It was actually worse for me. That if I tried to do that, I would eventually fall into a depression or have big anxiety spirals, things like this. So, but I mean, I'm a guy that's on YouTube like every night talking about this kind of stuff. So it's just, I guess that's what the universe has for me. So once again, Mystic, I hope you go off and do really wonderful things, friend, because it would be nice to be an extra in the life of greatness. From Elon Musk, my plan is to use the money to get humanity to Mars and preserve the light of consciousness. This guy is so fucking full of shit, eh? Like, this guy is so fucking full of shit. You want to preserve the light of consciousness. Like, this statement actually straight out encapsulates his belief that that the human race is done on Earth. He's not even attempting to fight back against climate change. He's not even attempting to push back on any of this kind of stuff. Zero attempt whatsoever. that his objective, if this is to be believed, which I don't think it should be, but is to get humanity to Mars and preserve the light of consciousness, implying that the light of consciousness is dead here on Earth. Like, this is big yikes shit, man. Like, this guy should not have money. Like, he should not have the amount of wealth that he has, right? Can you just fucking pay tax, please? Yeah. Like, it's just getting embarrassing. And the idea that someone is stupid and like someone whose brain is made of like pasta, the way that Musk is, the idea that he's the representative, that he's the one that's gonna continue the light of so on and so forth, it's just so fucking stupid. Yeah, his avatar is phallic. Of course it is. Because that's all it is, right? He's just shooting his cock up into space, right? How do you preserve the light of consciousness? You reproduce, right? Like, I'm dead serious. Like, I'm dead serious when I say that Elon Musk is a stupid person. Like, he's a very, very dumb person. Like, he lives in his cock. He doesn't really have ideas or thoughts. Like, I strongly advise anybody who wants to challenge me on this, go and watch his interview with Joe Rogan. Right? Go and watch his interview with Joe Rogan, and what you are going to see is you're going to see a total fucking moron who's just like being taken seriously by Joe Rogan, but who is not serious at all. And it's very obvious that he's an incredibly dumb person. Yeah, that's so completely delusional. If Earth goes, any Mars colony would be gone too. Yeah, a Mars colony is 200 years plus of technological development away from being able to self-sustain. Well, and I always try to find linchpin arguments, what I call linchpin arguments, right? What is the linchpin to their entire way of thinking, and pull the linchpin out, right? So, for example, the Uyghur genocide narrative, I think I have finally found the linchpin of the whole thing, right? Which is that every single time we have committed a genocide in the West, so like Adolf Hitler's concentration camps, the residential school system, the enslavement of the black population, the genocide of the First Nations people, we have done so openly in halls of parliament. We've talked about it, right? There have been large majority agreements, not only amongst the populace, but also in the halls of power, where they say out loud that their intention is to commit a genocide, and on public record, no less, right? And why do they do that? Because organizing a genocide is a big organizational project. It's an enormous organizational project. How do you eradicate millions of people without talking about it, right? You have to. So, if there is a Uyghur genocide going on in China, why are they not talking about it? Why is there no documentation? Why is there nothing on the public record? Why is there not a single official? Why has no one actually talked to or mentioned it at all in their system whatsoever? And so what we're being told is that, China's committing a genocide without organizing it. It's just doing it. How could you possibly believe that? How could you possibly believe that? And so in the same way, I look at this Mars colony idea. So you're telling me that you want to spend money in order to terraform a place that doesn't even have an atmosphere, but you can't terraform the Earth itself. So you can terraform a fucking dead rock in order to create sustainable life, but you can't terraform the place that's already sustaining life. That's what you're trying to tell me. That you actually think it's easier to terraform a fucking dead rock in order to produce life than it is to just create a sustainable model within the system that already has produced and is still producing life. That's how fucking stupid these guys are, right? It's incredibly stupid to believe that you're gonna terraform Mars but not terraform the Earth. Like, you've got to be a complete dullard to think this way. Which again, and that is so stupid that I do think that Musk is just part of the military. Like, I think that everything he does exists so that the military can get away with a lot of shit that they wouldn't necessarily be able to get away with, right? Like, if we found out that it was the US military that was commissioning the building of these robots, people would be like up in arms about it, right? If we found out that it was the US military that was funding gigantic internal domestic drone programs, we would be losing our minds about it. But if it's Bezos and Musk, well, it's just business, right? That's just, oh, they're just billionaire businessmen, right? That's just a good business model, right? So like literally Jeff Bezos can float a blimp full of drones into the middle of New York City and distribute drones into the middle of New York City. And you're telling me that the United States military isn't looking at that being like, successful test run. It's absolutely what's happening. It's absolutely what's happening. Oh, I know, buddy. I know. What's going on? Yeah, Musk is a trust fund baby who cosplays an innovator when in actuality he's nothing but a billfold. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And in the midst of all the crisis that we're having, the inflation, all this kind of nonsense, Canada real estate prices are overvalued by up to 91%. Oh, shit. And, higher mortgage rates will drag Canadian home. Like, they always talk about it in, like, the stupidest possible ways, right? Because they're still talking about it as if we live in 1975, right? They're still talking about it as if we live in an economy, right? We don't live in an economy. Like, there is no economy. That doesn't exist, right? What exists is a billionaire class that wants assets for itself, right? And so what it's doing is it's buying up assets. And it's no fucking mystery, right? Like, this should be the thing that we are all talking about. But right now, when it comes to housing prices, we're in like the early days of talking about the climate change movement, right? And so what do they do, right? In the early days of talking about the climate change, well, they've got to both sides it. Oh, it's a complex issue. There's multiple sides, right? Oh, all right, well, this guy's saying this, but does that actually bear out? Let's go talk to a billionaire surrogate over here. Okay, that's the same as talking to a PhD professor that studied the issue, right? Like, that's exactly what they're going to do to this housing crisis, right? And once the economy collapses, once the currency collapses, right? Well, Bill Gates will just have all the housing and Jeff Bezos will have housing and they'll all just own housing, right? Which they'll force people to rent at exorbitant rates because they don't care if you're homeless. Like, they don't give a fuck about that at all. And like, these places like better dwell, and some of these guys I think actually are like trying to talk about this and try to make sense of it, but they keep talking about it as if neoliberalism is an economic system, which is the fatal flaw in the way that they think, right? Neoliberalism was never an economic system. It was always a religious ideology. And once you understand that they don't care if the economy collapses, once you understand that they don't care if the currency becomes valueless, they care about having a ton of assets so that they can be neo-feudal kings or princes or barons or whatever you want to call them. Like, everything makes a fucking lot more sense. Everything makes a lot more sense. Like, the way they're acting makes sense. Everything makes a ton of sense. But this idea that, like, higher mortgage rates are expected to grind growth down to a standstill. Urban prices are forecast to grow over the next year. It's all going to grow because no one's going to have access to anything, right? No one's going to have access to anything. The billionaires will just have it, right? And what maybe they'll rent it out, but who cares, right? What can you give a billionaire, right? The whole concept of an economy is that there's trade that is possible to occur, right? But if the billionaires own everything, what can you possibly give them, right? And the response is usually, well, you can give them your labor, but eventually they don't need that, right? Like, if literally the entire point of our economy is to service the whims of like 10 people, right? Let's be not that insane. Let's say that it's like 1,000 people, right? Well, they're not going to hire all of us, right? There's 36 million people in Canada, right? 11 families have more wealth than the bottom half of the population. Like, what the fuck do you think is happening, guys? Like, and if this situation occurs, when this situation occurs, where small groups of people have the most amount of wealth, the economy collapses. It can't sustain itself this way because it's not how an economy actually works, right? Economies require spending and purchasing and spending and purchasing and spending and purchasing. It needs to operate in a cycle, and the top of that cycle needs to be the issuer of the currency. And if it isn't, then the system collapses, right? And you can't have money just siphoning off, right? Because that's how it collapses, which is exactly what it's going to do. I know. This real Elon Musk energy. I can't go on like this. Losing $1 billion a minute. I'll be broke in 600 years. Like, what a total fucking loser this guy is, man. Total fucking loser. McDonald's workers joining the Striketober worker revolt. It's this is a good start. Like, it's a good start. But someone pointed out to me, if we were striking on the level that they were striking throughout the 40s, in terms of like a per capita basis, we'd have 40 million people striking in America, right? We have not yet reached 1 million. Now, I think part of that is because America no longer has a manufacturing base. Hey B, how you doing? Is there a chance we would burn down all the homes and buildings if the billionaires own them all? So I would like to, I'm only going to do this because I would like you to stray away from comments of violence. That's what I'm going to do. No, I'm not going to remove it. I'll let it be. Statements of violence, and that is how they will shut this channel down. No bullshit, no lie. That is their strategy, right? That's why I don't really permit like guillotine talk around here. That's why I don't really like to go too deep into like acts of violence against the billionaire class, because that's how this channel gets taken down, without a doubt. And so I'm just letting you know, I value the energy that you're putting forward. I value that, but we do have to talk about these things in regards to peaceful protest and electoralism to the degree that matters, which is very little. And I mean, is there a chance that we would burn down all the homes and buildings if the billionaires own them all? I mean, we need someplace to live. We need someplace to live. No, my feeling is like just occupation, right? A peaceful protest movement, surround the halls of power, right? Like, non-participation is going to be the most powerful tool moving forward, right? Non-participation is absolutely the most powerful. Like, if we won't actually participate in their death cult system, then it doesn't work, right? And if we do everything, just a way to reverse Uno them, yeah. I mean, the way to reverse Uno them is to just like, if you actually had control of the halls of power, right? Like, you could set a tax rate of 100% over $10 million, including wealth, like make that a wealth tax, not an income tax. You have over $10 million, the tax is 100% over that. That's the end of it. It's over. They have to get rid of a bunch of assets and a bunch of properties and a bunch of shit. They have to, right? And if they don't, then you can imprison them, very straightforwardly. And if you ask me, that's like the best thing that we could probably do for the entire society. That like, it would essentially be just doing that would in many ways just be a reset. and it would breathe life back into the system, and then we would have to do a bunch of changes to the system to ensure that the wealth could not accrue again. And I mean, I think a tax of 100% over $10 million is perfectly reasonable. Like, perfectly reasonable. Like, who gives a shit about these guys? I don't understand why we're supposed to worship these guys. Like, what have they done? Like, it seems to me like their victory is the destruction of humanity. Yeah, I'm really not much in the Christmas spirit this year. Yeah. Yeah, if the capitalists miss Christmas, that's the end of capitalism. Like, really. Like, I'm already seeing lots of people talking about a Black Friday walkout, right? Like doing strike actions and sit-ins and things on Black Friday. I think that's a really effective. I think that's a really, really effective idea. Getting in and messing with people on Black Friday, like, they'd be crippling. I feel like the elites would have to make the world fairer if they owned everything, because people would simply riot and destroy everything. But that's not how they think, dude. Like, that's not how they think. Like, you've got to remember that these guys are psychopaths, right? Like, and I'm not saying that hyperbolically or to insult them. I'm saying that because we have done the scientific experiments, we have done the research, and every single time we research what happens to a person if they accrue a mass amount of wealth, they turn into a psychopath. Every single time. It's predictable, right? It's predictive. And so what you end up with is, if you end up with a billionaire class that owns everything, right? And wants to keep it that way because they're psychotic. And so they're willing to hire. So, like, literally the only job that will exist is police, right? And so, and we're seeing it already. Like, here in Toronto, our mayor, John Tory, cleared out the parks. Homeless people were sleeping in the parks, right? So he took a whole bunch of police and he cleared out the encampments, okay? Well, somebody actually did, like, a cost assessment of that, and they found out that for every homeless person, they spent $200,000. Sorry, $20,000. 200,000 is outrageous. Well, 20,000 is outrageous. They spent $20,000 per homeless person, which of course begs the question, well, why didn't you just give the homeless people $20,000? Let them go get an apartment, right? Like, wouldn't that have been nice? Wouldn't that have been much cleaner? Wouldn't that have been easier? Right? Nope. Like, you are ruled by a psychotic psychopath class that will use military force in order to exert itself in the world. And it's not going to suddenly be like, oh, maybe I'll do nice things for them, right? They'll hide behind gates. They'll hide behind police. And the only time that's going to change is if the police give up. And if the military, if the military and the police put their guns down and put their weapons down, right, and let the people inside the building, then it'll change, right? Then it'll change. But as long as the only thing that these psychotic ghouls care about is their own skin, that's it. I never would have thought people could be so evil until the Holocaust happened. Yeah. Well, and think about this, B. Like, even the Nazis weren't attempting to destroy humans, like destroy human life, right? They weren't trying to destroy all of humanity. So the evil that we're facing today, in my view, is far more evil than the Nazis and the Holocaust. Which isn't to say that it wasn't evil. Obviously it was. It came out of a capitalist society, right? And we're going to return to it, for sure. But at least they weren't trying to destroy all human life, whereas now these guys are actually trying to destroy all human life. Like, it might as well be a stated agenda by these guys now, right? Like, I'm of the opinion that these guys are so detached and so psychotic that they can't accept the fact that the system kills them. And instead of approaching the moment of their death with humility or gratitude or acceptance even, they are going to attempt to destroy the system on their way out. Because in their mind, they matter more than the system does. And if it's going to kill them, then they're going to try to kill it back. That's what we're looking at. They want zero carbon. Does that include us? They keep talking about net zero, right? It's all about net zero. And so, of course, they're creating all kinds of bullshit ways of talking about that. Like, we can clear cut old growth forests and then just like plant monoculture trees, and that's the same thing. Yeah. Ruth, how you doing? I've heard stories that would give you nightmares my whole life. Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. Like, I'm really trying to kill this sort of naive hopefulness. Like what happened with Obama, right? Like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. That, like, Obama came along with his hope and change shit and his propaganda nonsense, and we all bought it, right? We all bought it. And nobody at the time was standing up being like, this is bullshit. Like, he's so obviously grifting us. This is so obviously just like nonsense. And even if that person was standing up, people would have been like, no, hope and change, yeah, believe, right? Wasted 8 years, and we ended up with Donald Trump, right? Like, and it was a waste of 8 years. It was a complete waste. He didn't hope and change anything. It was total bullshit. So, like, they want to do that to us again and again and again and again. They're going to try to do that to us as often as they possibly can. That's what this net zero shit is about. That's what this 1.5 degrees Celsius shit is all about. They're all just grifting us, trying to pretend like they actually care about the issue, when the truth is they don't give a fuck at all. They don't care at all. They are happy if we die. That to them is almost completely meaningless. Like, they don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck at all. At all. Like, the only time that they even contemplate and think about us is the same way that you would think about cattle. Like, how do you keep control of the cattle? And that's it. Oh, I didn't actually have the time to actually watch it, Loaf. I'll watch it. I'll watch it for sure. Because you seem genuinely interested that I watch that. So I'll watch that. How long is that video? Maybe I'm just wondering if I could play it. Kind of like Coke Zero? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Coke Zero, it's got 0 calories, so it's good, right? You can drink as much Coke Zero as you want because it's good now, right? Yeah, Coke Zero. Yeah. This is a great and powerful article. You know what, man? I am going to read this one. You know why I'm going to read this one? Because it's George Monbiot. And I just would love to have the words that he says come out of my mouth. Capitalism is killing the planet. It's time to stop buying into our own destruction. This is being published in The Guardian. So you're seeing, like, things are starting to reach a fever pitch when even certain corporate media sites and media outlets are beginning to allow people like George Monbiot a platform. Instead of focusing on micro-consumerist bollocks like ditching our plastic coffee cups, we must challenge the pursuit of wealth and level down, not up. There is a myth about human beings that withstands all evidence. It's that we always put our survival first. This is true of other species. When confronting by an impending threat such as winter, they invest great resources into avoiding or withstanding it, migrating or hibernating, for example. Humans are a different matter. When faced with an impending or chronic threat such as climate or ecological breakdown, we seem to go out of our way to compromise our survival. We convince ourselves that it's not so serious, or even that it isn't happening. We double down on destruction, swapping our ordinary cars for SUVs, jetting to oblivion on a long-haul flight, burning it all up in a final frenzy. In the back of our minds, there's a voice whispering, if it were really so serious, someone would stop us. If we attend to these issues at all, we do so in ways that are petty, tokenistic, comically ill-matched to the scale of our predicament. It is impossible to discern, in our response to what we know, the primacy of our survival instinct. Here is what we know. We know that our lives are entirely dependent on complex natural systems, the atmosphere, ocean currents, the soil, the planet's webs of life. People who study complex systems have discovered that they behave in consistent ways. It doesn't matter whether the system is a banking network, a nation-state, a rainforest, or an Antarctic ice shelf. Its behavior follows certain mathematical rules. In normal conditions, the system regulates itself, maintaining a state of equilibrium. It can absorb stress up to a certain point. But then it suddenly flips. It passes a tipping point, then falls into a new state of equilibrium, which is often impossible to reverse. Human civilization relies on current equilibrium states. But all over the world, crucial systems appear to be approaching their tipping points. If one system crashes, it is likely to drag down others, triggering a cascade of chaos known as a systemic environmental collapse. This is what happened during previous mass extinctions. Here's one of the many ways in which it could occur. A belt of savanna known as the Cerrado covers central Brazil. Its vegetation depends on dew forming, which depends in turn on deep-rooted trees, drawing up groundwater, then releasing it into the air through their leaves. But over the past few years, vast tracts of the Cerrado have been cleared to plant crops, mostly soya to feed the world's chickens and pigs. As the trees are felled, the air becomes drier. This means smaller plants die, ensuring that even less water is circulated. In combination with global heating, some scientists warn this vicious cycle could, soon and suddenly, flip the entire system into desert. The Cerrado is the source of some of South America's great rivers, including those flowing north into the Amazon basin. As less water feeds the rivers, this could exacerbate the stress afflicting the rainforests. They are being hammered by a deadly combination of clearing, burning, and heating, and are already threatened with possible systemic collapse. The Cerrado and the rainforest both create rivers in the sky, streams of wet air, that distribute rainfall around the world and help to drive global circulation, the movement of air and global ocean currents. Global circulation is already looking vulnerable. For example, the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation, which delivers heat from the tropics towards the poles, is being disrupted by the melting of Arctic ice and has begun to weaken. Without it, the UK would have a similar climate to Siberia's. AMOC has two equilibrium states, on and off. It has been on for almost 12,000 years, following a devastating 1,000-year off state called the Younger Dryas, which caused a global spiral of environmental change. Everything we know and love depends on AMOC remaining in the on state. Regardless of which complex system is being studied, there's a way of telling whether it is approaching a tipping point. Its outputs begin to flicker. The closer to its critical threshold it comes, the wilder the fluctuations. What we've seen this year is a great global flickering, as Earth systems begin to break down. The heat domes over the western seaboard of North America, the massive fires there, in Siberia and around the Mediterranean, the lethal floods in Germany, Belgium, China, Sierra Leone. These are the signals that in climate Morse code spell Mayday. You might expect an intelligent species to respond to these signals swiftly and conclusively by radically altering its relationship with the living world. But this is not how we function. Our great intelligence, our highly evolved consciousness that once took us so far, now works against us. An analysis by the media sustainability group Albert found that cake was mentioned 10 times as often as climate change on UK TV programs in 2020. Scotch egg received double the mentions of biodiversity. Banana bread beat wind power and solar power put together. I recognize that the media are not society and that television stations have an interest in promoting banana bread and circuses. We could argue about the extent to which the media are either reflecting or generating an appetite for cake over climate. But I suspect that, of all the ways in which we might measure our progress on preventing systemic environmental collapse, the cake to climate ratio is the decisive index. The current ratio reflects a determined commitment to irrelevance in the face of global catastrophe. Tune in to almost any radio station, anytime, and you can hear the frenetic distraction at work. While around the world wildfires rage, floods sweep cars from the streets, and crops shrivel, you will hear a debate about whether to sit down or stand up while pulling on your socks, or a discussion about a charcuterie boards for dogs. I'm not making up these examples. I stumbled across them while flicking between channels on days of climate disaster. If an asteroid were heading towards Earth and we turned on the radio, we'd probably hear, so the hot topic today is, what's the funniest thing that ever happened to you while eating a kebab? This is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but with banter. Faced with crisis on an unprecedented scale, our heads are filled with insistent babble. The trivialization of public life creates a loop. It becomes socially impossible to talk about anything else. I'm not suggesting that we should discuss only the impending catastrophe. I'm not against bants. What I'm against is nothing but bants. It's not just on the music and entertainment channels that this deadly flippancy prevails. Most political news is nothing but court gossip. Who's in, who's out, who's said what to whom. It studiously avoids what lies beneath. The dark money, the corruption, the shift of power away from the democratic sphere, the gathering environmental collapse that makes a nonsense of its obsessions. I'm sure it's not deliberate. I don't think anyone faced with the prospect of systemic environmental collapse is telling themselves, quick, let's change the subject to charcuterie boards for dogs. It works at a deeper level than this. It's a subconscious reflex and tells us more about ourselves than our conscious action do. The chatter on the radio sounds like a distant signal from a dying star. There are some species of caddisfly whose survival depends on the breaking the surface film of the water in a river. The female pushes through it, no mean feat for such a small and delicate creature, then swims down the water column to lay her eggs on the river bed. If she cannot puncture the surface, she cannot close the circle of life, and her progeny die with her. This is also the human story. If we cannot pierce the glassy surface of distraction and engage with what lies beneath, we will not secure the survival of our children or perhaps our species. But we seem unable or unwilling to break the surface film. I think of this strange state as our surface tension. It's the tension between what we know about the crisis we face and the frivolity with which we distance ourselves from it. Surface tension dominates even when we claim to be addressing the destruction of our life support systems. We focus on what I call micro-consumerist bollocks, tiny issues such as plastic straws and coffee cups, rather than the huge structural forces driving us towards catastrophe. We are obsessed with plastic bags. We believe we're doing the world a favor of buying tote bags instead, though on one estimate, the environmental impact of producing an organic cotton tote bag is equivalent to that of 20,000 plastic ones. We are rightly horrified by the image of a seahorse with its tail wrapped around a cotton bud, but apparently unconcerned about the elimination of entire marine ecosystems by the fishing industry. We tut and shake our heads and keep eating our way through the life of the sea. A company called Soltaire Power receives wide media coverage for its claim to be fighting climate change by catching the carbon dioxide exhaled by office workers. But its carbon-sucking unit, an environmentally costly tower of steel and electronics, extracts just 1 kilogram of carbon dioxide every 8 hours. Humanity produces, mostly by burning fossil fuels, roughly 32 billion kilograms of CO2 in the same period. I don't believe our focus on microscopic solutions is accidental, even if it is unconscious. All of us are experts at using the good things we do to blot out the bad things. Rich people can persuade themselves they've gone green because they recycle, while forgetting that they have a second home, arguably the most extravagant of all their assets on the living world, as another house has to be built to accommodate the family they've displaced. And I suspect that in some deep, unlit recess of the mind, we assure ourselves that if our solutions are so small, the problem can't be so big. I'm not saying the small things don't matter. I'm saying they should not matter to the exclusion of things that matter more. Every little counts, but not for very much. Our focus on MCB aligns with the corporate agenda. The deliberate effort to stop us seeing the bigger picture began in 1953 with a campaign called Keep America Beautiful. It was founded by packing manufacturers, motivated by the profits they could make by replacing reusable containers with disposable plastic. Above all, they wanted to sink state laws insisting that glass bottles were returned and reused. Keep America Beautiful shifted the blame for the tsunami of plastic trash the manufacturers caused onto litter bugs, a term it invented. The Love Where You Live campaign, launched in the UK in 2011 by Keep Britain Tidy, Imperial Tobacco, McDonald's, and the sweet manufacturer Wrigley, seemed to me to play a similar role. It had the added bonus, as it featured strongly in classrooms, of granting Imperial Tobacco exposure to school children. The corporate focus on litter, amplified by the media, distorts our view of all environmental issues. For example, a recent survey of public beliefs about river pollution found that litter and plastic was by far the biggest cause people named. In reality, the biggest source of water pollution is farming, followed by sewage. Litter is way down the list. It's not that plastic is unimportant. The problem is that it's almost the only story we know. In 2004, the advertising company Ogilvy and Mather worked for the oil giant BP, took this blame shifting a step further by inventing the personal carbon footprint. It was a useful innovation, but it also had the effect of diverting political pressure from the producers of fossil fuels to consumers. The oil companies didn't stop there. The most extreme example I've seen was a 2019 speech by the chief executive of the oil company Shell, Ben van Beurden. He instructed us to eat seasonally and recycle more, and publicly berated his chauffeur for buying a punnet of strawberries in January. The great political transition of the past 50 years, driven by corporate marketing, has been a shift from addressing our problems collectively to addressing them individually. In other words, it has turned us from citizens into consumers. It is not hard to see why we have been herded down this path. As citizens, joining together to demand political change, we are powerful. As consumers, we are almost powerless. In his book, Life and Fate, Vasily Grossman notes that when Stalin and Hitler were in power, one of the most astonishing human traits that came to light at this time was obedience. The instinct to obey. 1 second, guys. Sorry, my dog is in a crisis. Good boy, buddy. Sorry about that. When Stalin and Hitler were in power, one of the most astonishing human traits that came to light at this time was obedience. The instinct to obey, he observed, was stronger than the instinct to survive. Acting alone, seeing ourselves as consumers, fixating on MCB and mind-numbing trivia, even as systemic environmental collapse looms, these are forms of obedience. We would rather face civilizational death than the social embarrassment caused by raising awkward subjects, and the political trouble involved in resisting powerful forces. The obedience reflex is our greatest flaw, the kink in the human brain that threatens our lives. What do we see if we break the surface tension? The first thing we encounter looming out of the depths should scare us almost out of our wits. It's called growth. Economic growth is universally hailed as a good thing. Governments measure their success on their ability to deliver it. But think for a moment about what it means. Say we achieve the modest aim promoted by bodies like the IMF and the World Bank of 3% global growth a year. That means that all the economic activity you see today, and most of the environmental impacts it causes, doubles in 24 years. In other words, by 2045. Then it doubles again by 2069. Then again by 2093. It's like the Gemino curse in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, which multiplies the treasure in the Lestrange vault until it threatens to crush Harry and his friends to death. All the crises we seek to avert today become twice as hard to address as global economic activity doubles, then twice again, then twice again. Have we reached the bottom yet? By no means. The Gemino curse is just one outcome of a thing we scarcely dare mention. Just as it was once blasphemous to use the name of God, even when the word appears in polite society, to be taboo, capitalism. Most people struggle to define the system that dominates our lives. But if you press them, they're likely to mumble something about hard work and enterprise, buying and selling. This is how the beneficiaries of the system want to be understood. In reality, the great fortunes amassed under capitalism are not obtained this way, but through looting, monopoly and rent grabbing, followed by inheritance. One estimate suggests that over the course of 200 years, the British extracted from India, at current prices, $45 trillion. They used this money to fund industrialization at home and the colonization of other nations, whose wealth was then looted in turn. The looting takes place not just across geography, but also across time. The apparent health of our economies today depend on seizing natural wealth from future generations. This is what the oil companies seeking to distract us with the MCB and carbon footprints are doing. Such theft from the future is the motor of economic growth. Capitalism, which sounds so reasonable when explained by a mainstream economist, is in ecological terms nothing but a pyramid scheme. Is this the riverbed? No. Capitalism is just a means by which something even bigger is pursued. Wealth. It scarcely matters how green you think you are. The main cause of your environmental impact isn't your attitude. It isn't your mode of consumption. It isn't the choices you make. It's your money. If you have surplus money, you spend it. While you might persuade yourself that you are a green mega consumer, in reality you are just a mega consumer. This is why the environmental impacts of the very rich, however right on they may be, are massively greater than everyone else. Preventing more than 1.5 Celsius of global heating means that our average emissions should be no greater than 2 tons of carbon dioxide per person per year. But the richest 1% of the world's people produce an average of more than 70 tons. Bill Gates, according to one estimate, emits almost 7,500 tons of CO2, mostly from flying in his private jets. Roman Abramovich, the same figures suggest, produces almost 34,000 tons, largely by running his gigantic yacht. The multiple homes that ultra-rich people own might be fitted with solar panels. Their supercars might be electric. Their private planes might run on biokerosene. But these tweaks make little difference to the overall impact of their consumption. In some cases, they increase it. The switch to biofuels favored by Bill Gates is now among the greatest causes of habitat destruction, as forests are felled to produce wood pellets and liquid fuels, and soils are trashed to make biomethane. But more important than the direct impacts of the ultra-wealthy is the political and cultural power with which they block effective change. Their cultural power relies on a hypnotizing fairy tale. Capitalism persuades us that we are all temporarily embarrassed millionaires. This is why we tolerate it. In reality, some people are extremely rich because others are extremely poor. Massive wealth depends on exploitation. And if we did all become millionaires, we would cook on the planet in no time at all. But the fairy tale of universal wealth one day secures our obedience. The difficult truth is that to prevent climate and ecological catastrophe, we need to level down. We need to pursue what the Belgian philosopher Ingrid Robbins calls limitarianism. Just as there is a poverty line below which no one should fall, there is a wealth line above which no one should rise. What we need are not carbon taxes, but wealth taxes. It shouldn't surprise us that ExxonMobil favors a carbon tax. It's a form of MCB. It addresses only one aspect of the many-headed environmental crisis, while transferring responsibility from the major culprits to everyone. It can be highly regressive, which means that the poor pay more than the rich. But wealth taxes strike at the heart of the issue. They should be high enough to break the spiral of accumulation and redistribute the riches accumulated by a few. They could be used to put us on an entirely different track, one that I call private sufficiency, public luxury. While there is not enough ecological or even physical space on Earth for everyone to enjoy private luxury, there is enough to provide everyone with public luxury. Magnificent parks, hospitals, swimming pools, art galleries, tennis courts and transport systems, playgrounds and community centers. We should each have our own small domains, private sufficiency, but when we want to spread our wings, we could do so without seizing resources from other people. In consenting to the continued destruction of our life support systems, we accommodate the desires of the ultra-rich and the powerful corporations they control. By remaining trapped in the surface film absorbed in frivolity and MCB, we grant them a social license to operate. We will endure only if we cease to consent. The 19th century democracy campaigners knew this, the suffragettes knew it, Gandhi knew it, Martin Luther King knew it. The environmental protesters who demand systemic change have also grasped this fundamental truth. In Fridays for Future, Green New Deal Rising, Extinction Rebellion, and other global uprisings against systemic environmental collapse, we see people, mostly young people, refusing to consent. What they understand is history's most important lesson. Our survival depends on disobedience. That's a nice read. That's a nice read. I like reading that kind of stuff out loud because that kind of stuff gets into your consciousness and gets into your thought space and will ultimately result, for me, it seems, to inform my art. That's why I really like reading these kinds of articles. A beautifully written, well-researched, well-argued article, And why I think it's so important to read these things, and for me to read them out loud, is because it enriches my internal landscape. And the language that he uses is so beautiful, right? How often do you actually say the word frivolity, right? Well, to those of you who are still here, I think it's time we say farewell. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for being here. As always, guys, you are the best part of this whole thing. You make this so wonderful and so lovely for me every single time. I know that I am somewhat the bearer of bad news, a grim sort of figure walking around ringing a bell. But to you, Lonnie, later as well, and always remember, you are a quantum being standing in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars to convince you something else is going on. We should stop them. Good luck. We're going to need it.